What's up, story lovers? Welcome to Harry FLAX. In today's video, we have a fantastic tale for you. What if blood test at age 7 revealed Harry was heir to Morgana and Dumbledore had been stealing his magic for 50 years? If this is your first time here, consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon so you never miss a story. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you for your continued support. Alright, let's jump right into it. Chapter 1, The Revelation. I swear the glass just vanished. 1 second it was there, separating 7-year-old Harry from the massive python lounging behind it, and the next, poof, gone, like it never existed. Dudley had been tapping on the glass, annoying both Harry and the snake, when suddenly Harry's anger flared and, well, now his cousin was splashing in the reptile exhibit pool while the snake slithered past with what Harry could have sworn was a thankful nod. Boy! What did you do? Uncle Vernon's face transformed into that particular shade of purple Harry had come to associate with being locked in his cupboard for days. I didn't do anything. The glass just disappeared. Harry backed away, bumping into a woman who gave him a curious look before moving on. Vernon grabbed Harry's arm with fingers like sausages. Don't you lie to me. This is the 3rd time this month something freakish has happened around you. He wasn't wrong. Last week, Harry's hair had regrown overnight after Aunt Petunia had practically shaved him bald. Before that, he'd somehow ended up on the school roof while running from Dudley's gang. These strange occurrences were happening more frequently and with greater intensity. The drive back to Privet Drive was silent except for Dudley's dramatic sobbing and Petunia's attempts to console him. Harry pressed himself against the car door, trying to become invisible. He could feel something building inside him, like a balloon inflating in his chest, pressing against his ribs. Cupboard. Now. No meals for a week, Vernon hissed as they pulled into the driveway. Harry didn't argue. What was the point? But as Vernon's meaty hand shoved him toward the cupboard under the stairs, that balloon in Harry's chest suddenly popped. The entire house shuddered. Light bulbs burst. The windows rattled in their frames. And Vernon Dursley, all 20+ stone of him, flew backward as if yanked by an invisible rope, crashing into the living room sofa with enough force to break the frame. What have you done? Petunia screamed, her horse-like face contorted in terror. Harry stared at his hands in shock. He hadn't touched Uncle Vernon, hadn't even wanted to hurt him, exactly. He'd just wanted him to stop. I don't know, Harry stammered, but the words died in his throat as he noticed something strange. The cupboard door had blown completely off its hinges, and inside, a soft golden light was pulsing. Drawn to it despite Petunia's continued shrieking, Harry approached cautiously. The light was coming from underneath the thin, ratty mattress where he slept. He lifted it to find a letter glowing with a light of its own. The envelope was thick, made of some kind of parchment, with emerald green ink addressing it to, Mr. H. Potter, the cupboard under the stairs 4, Privet Drive, Little Whinging, Surrey. Don't touch that. Petunia lunged forward, but another wave of that strange energy pulsed from Harry, freezing her in place. Harry's fingers trembled as he broke the strange wax seal. Inside was a single piece of parchment with just a few lines written in the same green ink: Blood calls to blood. The ancient rites demand testing. Come to Gringotts Bank, London, immediately. Follow the pull. Time runs short. Blood Fong, Inheritance Department. Harry had no idea what a Gringotts was, or who Blood Fong might be, but as soon as he finished reading, the letter dissolved into golden particles that sank into his skin. Immediately, he felt a tugging sensation behind his navel, pulling him, somewhere. What was that? Harry whispered, more to himself than to the still frozen Petunia. Vernon had managed to extract himself from the broken sofa and was staggering toward Harry, face now beyond purple into a dangerous crimson. You're going to pay for this, boy, but Harry felt the strange energy surge again, stronger this time. The pulling sensation intensified, and suddenly the world compressed around him. It was like being squeezed through a very tight tube. Colors blurred, pressure built in his ears, and then, he was somewhere else entirely. The first thing Harry noticed was the marble. White marble floors, soaring marble columns, marble counters stretching along a vast hall. The second thing he noticed was that the people behind those counters weren't people at all. They were goblins. Short, wrinkled creatures with long fingers and sharp, intelligent eyes. Some wore tiny spectacles perched on their long noses as they counted piles of gold coins. Others were examining gemstones through jewelers' loupes. "Ah, the Potter heir arrives," came a gravelly voice from beside him. Harry spun around to find himself face to face with one of the creatures. This one was particularly ancient-looking, with skin like crumpled parchment and eyes like polished onyx. You sent me the letter?" Harry asked, his voice small in the cavernous space. "Indeed. I am Blood Fong, head of the inheritance department at Gringotts, the Wizarding Bank." The goblin gave what might have been a smile, though it looked more like a predatory baring of teeth. "Your magical outbursts have been setting off our heredity alarms for months. It's time for testing." Wizarding Bank? Magical outbursts? Harry's head was spinning. "I don't understand." Bloodfang's expression shifted to something between surprise and suspicion. "You don't know about magic? About your heritage?" When Harry shook his head, the goblin actually growled. "Dumbledore has much to answer for. Come with me, Mr. Potter. There is much to discuss and little time. The old man's monitoring charms will have alerted him to your departure from Privet Drive." Before Harry could ask who Dumbledore was, Blood Fong turned sharply and began walking toward a set of ornate doors at the far end of the hall. Harry hurried to keep up, nearly colliding with a witch, an actual witch with a pointed hat and flowing robes, who was exiting the bank with a small pouch that clinked with coins. "Sorry," Harry mumbled, but she just stared at him, her eyes flicking to his forehead where his unusual lightning bolt scar was visible through his messy fringe. "Bless my soul," she whispered. Harry Potter, in the flesh. Harry had no time to process this bizarre interaction before Blood Fong yanked him through the doors and into a narrow stone corridor lit by flaming torches. "How did she know my name?" Harry asked, jogging to keep up with the goblin's surprisingly swift pace. "You're famous, Mr. Potter. Though apparently, you don't know that either." Bloodfang's tone was grim. "All will be revealed in the inheritance ritual. Your blood will tell us what has been kept from you." They descended deeper into what Harry realized must be underground vaults beneath the bank. The air grew cooler, and the torchlight cast dancing shadows on walls now adorned with strange symbols and runes. Finally, they reached a circular chamber with a raised stone platform in its center. The floor around the platform was etched with intricate patterns that seemed to shimmer slightly in the dim light. 5 goblins wearing elaborate red robes stood at equidistant points around the circle. "Step onto the platform, Mr. Potter," Blood Fong directed. Harry hesitated. "What's going to happen?" "We will perform a complete heritage and magical assessment. It requires a small amount of your blood." Blood Fong produced an ornate silver knife from his pocket. "The ritual will reveal your family lines, any magical inheritances, and, most critically in your case, detect any foreign magic interfering with your own." "Foreign magic?" Harry repeated, confused. "We've detected anomalies. Someone has been interfering with your magical core." Bloodfang's expression darkened. "Someone powerful has been stealing from you, Mr. Potter." The word "stealing" sent a cold chill down Harry's spine. He'd had so little in his life, threadbare hand-me-downs, broken toys Dudley no longer wanted, not even enough food most days. The idea that someone was stealing something else from him, something he didn't even know he had, made anger bubble up inside him again. Taking a deep breath, Harry stepped onto the platform. Blood Fong approached and held out his hand. "Your palm, please." Harry extended his hand, and Blood Fong made a quick, precise cut across his palm. It stung, but less than he expected. Blood welled up, surprisingly bright in the torchlight. "Let 7 drops fall onto the center stone," Blood Fong instructed. Harry did as he was told, watching as his blood hit the white stone. Instead of staining it, each drop seemed to be absorbed, causing the stone to glow progressively brighter with each drop. When the seventh drop touched the surface, the light flashed blindingly bright. The 5 robed goblins began chanting in a harsh, guttural language. The blood-infused stone pulsed in rhythm with their words, and the runes on the floor ignited with blue fire that gave off no heat. Harry felt something shift inside him, like a key turning in a lock he hadn't known existed. Power surged through him, making his hair stand on end. Images flashed before his eyes, a woman with fiery red hair shielding him with her body, a blinding green light, a high cold laugh, and then something else, a woman with raven hair and eyes like storm clouds, wielding power that made the air itself tremble. As suddenly as it began, the chanting stopped. The blue flames extinguished. But the stone continued to glow, projecting a complex, branching tree of golden light into the air above the platform. Names connected by shimmering lines stretched back generations. Extraordinary, breathed one of the robed goblins. Unprecedented, whispered another. Bloodfang stepped forward, his eyes wide as he studied the projection. Mr. Potter, your blood confirms what we suspected. You are not merely the son of James and Lily Potter. He pointed to a particular branch of the family tree that glowed brighter than the others. You are the magical heir of Morgana Le Fay herself. Harry stared blankly. Who? A new voice answered from the chamber entrance. The most powerful sorceress in British magical history. Painted as a villain by the victors, but in truth, the greatest protector of magical balance this land has ever known. Harry turned to see a man standing in the doorway. Tall and gaunt, with long, matted black hair and haunted eyes that somehow still managed to gleam with fierce intelligence. Despite his ragged appearance, he carried himself with a certain dignity. Sirius Black, Bloodfang growled. You should be in Azkaban. I should be a lot of things, Bloodfang. In prison isn't one of them. The man, Sirius, kept his eyes fixed on Harry. I felt it when the binding broke. The Godfather bond. It was like a lightning bolt to my soul. He took a step forward, his gaze intense. Harry. You look so much like James, but those eyes, pure lily. You knew my parents? Harry asked, his voice catching. I was your father's best friend. Your godfather. Sirius's voice broke slightly. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. I was detained. Imprisoned for the murder of 12 Muggles and Peter Pettigrew, Bloodfang clarified coldly. Crimes I didn't commit, Sirius shot back. But we don't have time for that now. The ritual's magical signature will have alerted Dumbledore. He turned back to Harry. We need to see the full inheritance results before he arrives. Indeed, Bloodfang agreed reluctantly. He waved a gnarled hand, and the glowing family tree transformed into rows of text. The goblin studied them, his expression growing darker with each line. As we suspected. Albus Dumbledore has placed multiple bindings on your magic, Mr. Potter. But it's worse than we feared. The goblin pointed to a pulsing red line of text. This indicates a persistent magical siphon, drawing power directly from your core. Based on the magical signature, it's been active for approximately 50 years. 50 years? Sirius exclaimed. Harry's only 7. The siphon is connected to his bloodline, specifically the Morgana inheritance, Bloodfang explained. Dumbledore has been drawing on the latent power of the Le Fay line since before the boy was born. First through distant relatives, then through his mother, and now through him. The siphon automatically attaches to the strongest available heir. Harry struggled to understand. So this Dumbledore person has been stealing my magic? For 50 years. But why? Power, Sirius spat. The great Albus Dumbledore, defeater of Grindelwald, leader of the light, a bloody thief all along. He ran a hand through his tangled hair. It explains so much. How he always seemed to have endless reserves of magic. How he could perform feats no one else could match. A deep tremor ran through the chamber. Dust fell from the ceiling. "He's coming," Bloodfang hissed. "The bank's defensive wards are reacting to his approach." "We need to go," Sirius said urgently, reaching for Harry. "Wait." Harry stepped back. "I don't even know you. How do I know I can trust you?" Sirius froze, then slowly nodded. "Smart lad. Just like your mother." He held out his hand, palm up. "I, Sirius Orion Black, swear on my life and magic that I mean no harm to Harry James Potter, that I am innocent of the crimes for which I was imprisoned, and that I will protect him with my last breath from Albus Dumbledore and any who would harm him. So I swear, so mote it be." A flash of silver light encircled his wrist, then Harry's, before fading into their skin. "A wizard's oath," Bloodfang explained. "Breaking it means death." Another tremor, stronger this time. The torches flickered. "He's breaching the outer defenses," one of the robed goblins announced. "Take this," Bloodfang thrust a small golden key into Harry's hand. "Your family vault key. Dumbledore had it, but we've changed the enchantments. Only your blood will open it now." Sirius crouched down to Harry's level. "Harry, I know this is all happening very fast, but I need you to trust me. Dumbledore isn't the benevolent wizard everyone thinks he is. He's been stealing your birthright, and he won't stop now." Harry looked into the man's eyes and saw genuine concern there, along with something else, a fierce protectiveness that Harry had never experienced before. The oath had convinced him intellectually, but it was this look that decided him emotionally. "How do we get out of here?" Harry asked. Sirius grinned, a flash of handsomeness breaking through his haggard appearance. "That's my godson." A deafening boom echoed through the chamber. The goblins moved into defensive positions. "The southeast passage," Bloodfang directed. "It connects to the old Black Vault. As his godson, the Blood Wards might let you pass." "Worth a shot," Sirius agreed. "Come on, Harry." They raced down a narrow corridor, the sounds of commotion growing behind them. Harry's heart pounded as they twisted through a maze of passages that seemed to go on forever. Finally, they reached a blank stone wall carved with the image of a raven. "Black Family Vault Entrance," Sirius explained. "Touch it, Harry. If the Godfather bond is recognized by the old magic, it should." Before he could finish, the raven carving animated, its stone head turning to look at Harry with glittering obsidian eyes. "Blood of my bonded," it croaked in a voice like grinding stone. "Pass if you will, but the price is blood freely given." Harry didn't hesitate. The cut on his palm had already healed, another mystery to ponder later, so he pressed his thumb against one of his teeth until it broke the skin, then pressed it to the raven's beak. The stone wall melted away, revealing a vast chamber filled with treasure. But they had no time to gawk. "Through here," Sirius urged, pulling Harry past mountains of gold coins and display cases of jewels toward another door at the back. "This connects to, going somewhere, Sirius." The new voice froze them in place. Turning slowly, Harry saw an old man standing at the vault entrance. Tall and thin, with a silver beard long enough to tuck into his belt, half-moon spectacles perched on a crooked nose, and robes spangled with moons and stars. Despite his grandfatherly appearance, his blue eyes were cold and calculating. "Dumbledore," Sirius snarled, pushing Harry behind him. "My dear boy," Dumbledore sighed. "What a disappointment you've become. Breaking out of Azkaban, kidnapping young Harry, and after all I did to protect you." "Protect me?" Sirius barked a harsh laugh. "You left me to rot without a trial while you drained Harry's family magic." Dumbledore's expression didn't change, but Harry felt a shift in the air, like the pressure drop before a storm. "You don't understand the greater good, Sirius. You never did. The power in Harry's bloodline is too dangerous to be left unchecked. History has proven that." "You're not checking it," Harry spoke up, stepping out from behind Sirius. "You're stealing it." Dumbledore's gaze shifted to Harry, and he felt a strange pressure against his mind, like invisible fingers trying to pry open a door. "Get out of his head." Sirius raised his hand, and Harry realized he was holding a wand, though where he'd gotten it, Harry couldn't guess. A red light shot toward Dumbledore, who deflected it with a casual flick of his own wand. "Harry," Dumbledore said, his voice suddenly gentle. "There's so much you don't understand. Come with me, and I'll explain everything. These goblins have confused you with their wild accusations." Something stirred in Harry then, a presence he hadn't felt before. A woman's voice, distant but clear. "He lies, young heir. Feel the truth in your blood." And Harry did feel it, a certainty that Dumbledore was lying, that this grandfatherly concern was a mask for something darker. The balloon of power in his chest expanded again, but this time Harry didn't fight it. "You've been stealing from me," Harry said, his voice steadier than he felt. "From my mother. From my grandmother. For 50 years. Such imagination, Dumbledore chuckled, but his eyes had lost their twinkle. "Sirius has filled your head with nonsense." "The ritual showed the truth," Harry insisted. "My blood doesn't lie." Dumbledore's facade slipped then, just for a moment. His face hardened, and Harry glimpsed something cold and calculating beneath the benevolent mask. "Blood magic is notoriously unreliable, Harry. Now, this has gone on long enough." He raised his wand. "You'll both come with me, and we'll sort this out properly. Now, heir of my line. Call the power that is your birthright." The voice was stronger now, resonating through Harry's entire being. He didn't know what to do, but his body seemed to. His hands rose of their own accord, and words in a language he'd never heard spilled from his lips. "Astirunjan min blod, min magan, min ryht." Power exploded from Harry in a wave of midnight blue light. Dumbledore's eyes widened in genuine shock as the wave hit him, sending him flying backward out of the vault. The stone wall rematerialized instantly, sealing the entrance. "Bloody hell," Sirius whispered, staring at Harry. That was Old English. Morgana's language of power. Harry swayed on his feet, suddenly exhausted. "I don't know how I did that." "Your blood remembers what your mind doesn't yet know." Sirius steadied him with a gentle hand on his shoulder. "That bought us some time, but we need to move. Dumbledore won't be deterred for long." They hurried through the back door of the vault into another corridor that sloped steeply upward. After several minutes of climbing, they emerged into a small, dimly lit antechamber where a goblin waited beside a mine cart. "Griphook," Sirius acknowledged with a nod. "Bloodfang sent you?" "He did. The old bearded one breached the ritual chamber, but our warriors are delaying him." Griphook gestured to the cart. "This will take you to a secure exit in Muggle London. From there, you're on your own." The cart ride was like nothing Harry had ever experienced, hurtling through darkness at impossible speeds, taking hairpin turns that should have sent them flying off the tracks, plunging down drops that made his stomach lurch into his throat. Under different circumstances, it might have been fun. Finally, they screeched to a halt beside a plain wooden door set into the stone wall. "This exits into an alley near Charing Cross Road," Griphook explained. "The door will seal permanently behind you. For your safety, do not attempt to return to Gringotts for at least 72 hours. "Thank you," Harry said, climbing out on shaky legs. "Don't thank me, heir of Morgana," the goblin replied with that same predatory smile Harry had seen on Bloodfang. "Just remember that goblins value truth and justice. When the time comes to confront the chief warlock, the nation will stand with you." Before Harry could ask what a chief warlock was, Sirius was pulling him through the door. They emerged into a narrow, grimy alley between two towering brick buildings. The door vanished behind them, becoming solid brick. Right then, Sirius muttered, looking around warily. "We need to get off the streets. Dumbledore will have the Ministry looking for us soon." Harry had approximately 1 million questions, but the one that came out was, "What's the ministry?" Sirius barked a short laugh. "The magical government, such as it is. Dumbledore has them wrapped around his finger, another thing that makes more sense now that we know he's been siphoning Morgana-level power for decades." A loud crack from the end of the alley made them both jump. "Too late," Sirius muttered, pulling Harry behind a dumpster. "They're already looking." A figure in a flowing purple cloak was advancing down the alley, wand extended. "Point me Harry Potter," the figure murmured, and the wand swiveled to point directly at their hiding place. "Change of plans," Sirius whispered. "I need you to be very brave, Harry. This is going to feel strange." Before Harry could ask what "this" was, Sirius wrapped his arms around him tightly. The world compressed again, even more violently than before. The squeezing sensation was almost unbearable, and just when Harry thought his eyes might pop out of his head, it stopped. They were standing in a dense forest. Tall pines surrounded them, and the air was cooler and smelled of sap and wild herbs. No buildings in sight, no sounds of traffic, just wind through branches and distant birdsong. "What? How?" Harry gasped. "Apparition," Sirius explained, steadying Harry as he swayed. "Magical transportation. Sorry it's so uncomfortable the first few times." "Where are we?" "Scotland. Unplottable land owned by the Black family for generations. No one can find it unless they've been brought here by a Black." Sirius gestured toward what Harry had thought was just more forest. "The cottage is just through those trees." Sure enough, as they walked forward, a small stone cottage appeared as if materializing out of the very air. It was picturesque in a wild sort of way, weathered grey stone with a thatched roof, surrounded by what had once been a garden but was now mostly overgrown. "It's not much," Sirius said, a hint of apology in his voice. "But it's safe. The family magic will hide us while we figure out our next steps." Harry felt oddly choked up. "It's brilliant." Inside, the cottage was surprisingly spacious, another bit of magic, Harry supposed. A large main room with a stone fireplace, comfortable if dusty furniture, and bookshelves lining the walls. A small kitchen area occupied one corner, and two doors presumably led to bedrooms. Sirius waved his wand, and dust vanished from surfaces, the fire roared to life, and lamps throughout the cottage began to glow with warm light. "Sit, Harry," Sirius gestured to an armchair near the fire. "You must have questions." Harry sank into the chair, suddenly aware of how exhausted he was. "About 1 million. Let's start with the basics then." Sirius took the chair opposite. "You're a wizard, Harry. A potentially very powerful one, given your heritage. Your parents were magical too, some of the best I've ever known." "Aunt Petunia said they died in a car crash," Harry said quietly. "That's how I got this." He pushed his fringe back to reveal his lightning scar. Sirius's face darkened with anger. "A car crash? Those miserable muggles." He took a deep breath. "No, Harry. Your parents were murdered by a dark wizard called Voldemort. You're famous in our world because when he tried to kill you too, something happened. The curse rebounded. He vanished, and you survived with just that scar." Harry struggled to process this. "So that's why that witch at the bank recognized me?" "Exactly. You're known as the boy who lived." Sirius's expression softened. "Your mother died protecting you. Her love created a powerful magical shield. And my father? Died fighting, trying to give you and Lily time to escape." Sirius's eyes grew distant with memory. "James was like a brother to me. We were inseparable at Hogwarts, the wizarding school you'll attend when you're 11. Harry's head was spinning with information, but one question pressed more urgently than the others. "And this Morgana person, the ritual said I'm her heir. What does that mean?" "It means you've inherited her magical legacy." Sirius ran a hand through his tangled hair. Morgana Le Fay lived over 1,000 years ago. History, written by her enemies, remembers her as a dark sorceress who opposed Merlin and King Arthur. But the truth is more complicated. She was a champion of old magic, of balance. She believed magical power should be used to protect, not to rule. And Dumbledore has been stealing her, my power. Apparently for 50 years. Sirius shook his head in disgust. He must have discovered a descendant of Morgana's line and found a way to siphon their power. Then when they died, the connection transferred to the next strongest heir, and so on, until it reached you. Harry frowned, trying to put the pieces together. But why would he need to steal power? Isn't he already a powerful wizard? He is, or we thought he was. Sirius looked troubled. Albus Dumbledore is considered the greatest wizard of the modern age. Defeater of the dark wizard Grindelwald in 1945, headmaster of Hogwarts, supreme mugwump of the International Confederation of Wizards, chief warlock of the Wizengamot, our High Court. But if he's been stealing power all this time. He trailed off, implications hanging heavy in the air. He's a fraud, Harry finished flatly. Yes. And worse, he's been systematically weakening magical bloodlines. Sirius stood and began pacing. It makes an awful kind of sense. If he's been siphoning power from heirs of ancient lines, he's not just strengthening himself but weakening potential rivals. A wave of dizziness washed over Harry, and he slumped in his chair. You're exhausted, Sirius said, immediately concerned. And no wonder, after the ritual and that burst of wandless magic. We can talk more tomorrow. Let's get you to bed. Harry didn't protest as Sirius led him to one of the bedrooms. It was simple but comfortable, with a four-poster bed draped in midnight blue hangings and a window overlooking the forest. Rest, Sirius said, awkwardly patting Harry's shoulder. You're safe here. As he turned to leave, Harry called after him. Sirius? What was that voice I heard? In the vault, when Dumbledore came. A woman's voice, telling me what to do. Sirius paused in the doorway. If I had to guess, an echo of Morgana herself. The ritual must have awakened your connection to her. The most powerful magical heirs sometimes retain an echo of their ancestors' consciousness. He smiled slightly. Consider it a good sign. It means your true inheritance is beginning to break through Dumbledore's bindings. Left alone, Harry sank onto the bed, not even bothering to remove his oversized hand-me-downs. His mind raced with everything he'd learned. Magic was real, his parents had been murdered, he was the heir to a legendary sorceress, and the most respected wizard in Britain had been stealing his birthright for decades. Young heir. The voice again, whisper-soft at the edge of his consciousness. Morgana, he murmured into the darkness. The bindings weaken, but are not broken. Much power remains beyond your reach. But time is on our side now. Who are you, really? Were you evil, like the stories say? A soft, sad laugh echoed in his mind. History is written by the victors, young heir. I stood against those who would separate magic into arbitrary categories of light and dark. I fought for balance, for the old ways that honored the cycle of life and death. For this, they called me dark. Can you help me get back what Dumbledore stole? I can guide you, but the journey is yours to make. Your blood remembers what your mind must learn. Sleep now. The Black Heir is trustworthy, despite his shadows. Together, you will find others who have been wronged as you have been. Harry wanted to ask more, but exhaustion crashed over him like a wave. His last thought before sleep claimed him was that for the first time in his life, he wasn't alone. Harry woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of cooking. For a moment, he was disoriented. This wasn't his cupboard, with its familiar spiders and cramped ceiling. Then yesterday's events came flooding back. Magic. Gringotts. Dumbledore. Morgana. Sirius. He sat up, noticing that someone had removed his shoes and pulled a blanket over him. His glasses were folded neatly on a bedside table that hadn't been there last night. Next to them lay a set of clean clothes that looked like they might actually fit him. After changing into the new clothes, simple black trousers and a dark green jumper that was only slightly too large, Harry followed the cooking smells to the cottage's main room. Sirius stood at the small kitchen area, waving his wand to flip pancakes in a pan while simultaneously directing another wand to pour orange juice into glasses. He looked marginally better than yesterday, his face was clean-shaven, and his hair, while still long, had been washed and tied back. "You have 2 wands?" Harry asked by way of greeting. Sirius turned, a genuine smile warming his gaunt features. "Morning, Harry. And no, this one's just temporary." He held up the wand he'd been using to pour juice. "It belonged to my grandfather. Works for me, but not perfectly. We'll need to get you one of your own soon, but that might be tricky with Dumbledore looking for us." Harry sat at the small wooden table where breakfast was arranging itself. "How does that work?" "Getting a wand, I mean. Usually from Ollivander's shop in Diagon Alley. The wand chooses the wizard, not the other way around." Sirius brought the plate of pancakes to the table. "But we'll figure something out. Maybe a wand maker in another country." As they ate, Harry's million questions began pouring out, and Sirius answered as best he could, explaining about Hogwarts, the 4 houses, the wizarding world hidden alongside the Muggle one, and his own history as Harry's godfather. "So you didn't betray my parents?" Harry asked as he finished his 3rd pancake. "Never," Sirius said fiercely. "James and Lily were in hiding under a special charm called the Fidelius. It conceals a location completely unless the secret keeper reveals it. Everyone thought I was their secret keeper, that was the plan, but at the last minute, we switched to Peter Pettigrew, another of our friends. We thought it was the perfect bluff. But he betrayed them. To Voldemort, yes. When I realized what had happened, I went after him, crazed with grief. He shouted that I had betrayed Lily and James, then blew up the street, killed 12 Muggles, cut off his own finger, and transformed into a rat to escape." "Transformed into a rat?" Harry repeated, wide-eyed. "He was an animagus, a wizard who can turn into an animal at will. Your dad, Peter, and I all became animagi at school. James was a stag, Peter a rat, and I'm a large black dog. Can you show me?" Harry asked eagerly. Sirius grinned and stood up. A moment later, where he had been standing was an enormous shaggy black dog with intelligent gray eyes. The dog woofed softly, then transformed back into Sirius. "Wicked," Harry breathed. "It comes in handy. It's how I escaped Azkaban, the wizard prison. Dementors, the guards, can't sense animal emotions as clearly as human ones." Sirius shuddered slightly. "I stayed sane by knowing I was innocent. That's not a happy thought, so the Dementors couldn't take it from me." "How did you find me after you escaped?" "The Godfather bond. When your parents made me your godfather, we performed an old ritual that created a magical connection between us. It was dormant all these years, probably another of Dumbledore's bindings. But when your magic surged at the Dursleys and that first binding broke, the connection flared to life. I felt it in my cell and knew I had to get to you." Harry absorbed this, feeling a strange mixture of grief for what might have been and gratitude that Sirius had found him now. "So what do we do next?" he asked finally. "About Dumbledore, I mean. First, we need to break the siphoning spell completely." Sirius's expression turned serious. "It won't be easy. A spell that's been active for 50 years has deep roots. But the goblins gave me some information before we left." He pulled a folded parchment from his pocket. "This ritual might work, but we need more information, and possibly help from other old families who might have been affected. There are others like me?" "Almost certainly. If Dumbledore targeted the Morgana line, he probably went after other powerful bloodlines too. We need to identify them and make contact cautiously." Sirius tapped the parchment thoughtfully. But we need to be careful. Dumbledore has the ministry, the school, and most of Wizarding Britain believing he's the greatest wizard since Merlin. We need allies and evidence before we go public. The Longbottom Heir, Morgana's voice whispered in Harry's mind. His power too has been bound. And the bones speak to the bones, child. Longbottom, Harry said aloud. And someone named Bones. Sirius looked startled. How did you? Is it Morgana? Harry nodded. She says the Longbottom Heir has been bound too. And something about Bones speaking to the Bones child. Augusta Longbottom's grandson, Neville. And Susan Bones, niece of Amelia Bones, who heads the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Sirius looked thoughtful. Both from old, powerful families. Both Harry's age. It makes sense Dumbledore would target them too. How do we contact them without Dumbledore finding out? Carefully. Sirius stood and began clearing the breakfast dishes with a wave of his wand. But first, we need to start your training. If we're going to break Dumbledore's hold on your magic, you need to understand what you're capable of. And so began the strangest, most wonderful week of Harry's life. Each morning, Sirius taught him the basics of magic theory, explaining about magical cores, the difference between intrinsic magic and spellwork, and the history Dumbledore had tried to suppress. Magic isn't inherently light or dark, Sirius explained as they sat cross-legged in a small clearing behind the cottage. That's a relatively modern classification system, pushed by wizards like Dumbledore who want to control which magics are acceptable. True magic is about intent and balance. In the afternoons, they worked on meditation techniques to help Harry connect with his magical core, trying to sense the bindings that restricted his power and the siphon that was draining it away. Close your eyes, Sirius instructed. Visualize your magic as light within you. What do you see? Harry concentrated, focusing inward as Sirius had taught him. At first, there was only darkness, but gradually, he began to sense something, a swirling sphere of blue-violet light at his center. But it was constrained, wrapped in chains of sickly yellow that dug into the light, draining it through a thin tube that extended beyond his perception. It's like a ball of light, Harry described. But there are yellow chains around it, and they're pulling my magic away through some kind of tube. Sirius nodded grimly. That's the siphon. Now that you can see it, we can start working to dismantle it. By night, they pored over the books Sirius summoned from the cottage's hidden library, ancient tomes on blood magic, inheritance rituals, and the old families of Wizarding Britain. Look at this, Harry said one evening, pointing to a passage in Lineages of Power, Britain's magical heritage. It says Morgana had 3 children who survived to adulthood. 2 sons and a daughter. The oldest son's line died out in the 1600s, but the other 2 branches continued. My mother must have been descended from one of them. From the daughter's line, I'd wager, Sirius said, looking over Harry's shoulder. The Lul Fey gift tends to run stronger through the female line, though it can manifest in males, as it clearly has with you. But my mum was Muggleborn, that's what you said. That's what everyone believed. But magical ability doesn't appear from nowhere. She must have been descended from a squib, a non-magical person born to a magical family. Somewhere in your mother's family tree, a squib from the Lul Fey line married into the Muggle world, and generations later, the magic resurfaced in Lily. On the 7th day after their escape from Gringotts, an owl arrived at breakfast, swooping through the open window to deliver a letter sealed with the Gringotts crest. Sirius checked it carefully for curses or tracking spells before opening it. It's from Blood Fawn, he said, scanning the contents. He says it's safe to return to Gringotts tomorrow. They've increased security, and Dumbledore's influence with the goblins has been severely damaged by his attack on the bank. What else? Harry asked, noting Sirius's troubled expression. Dumbledore has reported me as an escaped criminal who's kidnapped you. The Daily Prophet, the wizarding newspaper, is full of warnings about how dangerous I am and how concerned Dumbledore is for your safety. Sirius's mouth twisted bitterly. He's playing the worried grandfather figure to perfection. So everyone thinks you've kidnapped me to hurt me? That's what Dumbledore wants them to think. But Blood Fong says not everyone is buying it. Sirius tapped the letter. Apparently, Augusta Longbottom visited Gringotts 3 days ago and requested an inheritance test for her grandson. Neville Longbottom. Harry remembered the name Morgana had whispered. Yes. And guess what they found? Blocks on his magic, similar to yours, though without the siphoning component. And they were placed by Dumbledore, Harry finished. Exactly. Augusta was furious. The Longbottoms are an ancient and noble house. She's demanding answers. Sirius looked grimly satisfied. The cracks in Dumbledore's facade are starting to show. So what's our next move? We return to Gringotts tomorrow under Goblin protection. They'll help us perform the ritual to break the siphon. Sirius folded the letter carefully. And then we start gathering allies for what comes next. That night, Harry found it hard to sleep, his mind racing with thoughts of what tomorrow might bring. Would the ritual work? What would happen when his full power was restored? And what would Dumbledore do when he realized his magical theft had been discovered and stopped? Do not fear your heritage, young heir, Morgana's voice came as Harry drifted on the edge of sleep. When the chains break, I will guide you through the flood. Will I be able to defeat Dumbledore? Harry murmured into the darkness. Power alone does not ensure victory. Dumbledore has built his deception over decades. Revealing the truth will require more than magical strength. It will require wisdom, allies, and timing. I'm only 7, Harry whispered. Yes. And that, ironically, may be our greatest advantage. Dumbledore underestimates you because of your youth. By the time he realizes his mistake, it will be too late. With that comforting thought, Harry finally drifted to sleep, dreaming of breaking chains and rushing power and a raven-haired woman with storm-cloud eyes who smiled at him with fierce pride. The return to Gringotts was far less dramatic than their exit had been. Sirius brought them to a different entrance, a small, unmarked door in an alley several streets away from the main building. A goblin was waiting for them, holding a lantern despite the morning sunlight. Heir Potter. Mr. Black. Blood Fong awaits you. The goblin led them through a twisting underground passage that eventually connected to the main bank, emerging behind the counters where Harry had first arrived. Blood Fong stood waiting in the same ritual chamber where Harry had discovered his heritage a week earlier. With him was an imposing elderly woman wearing emerald green robes and a hat adorned with what appeared to be a stuffed vulture, and a round-faced boy about Harry's age who looked both nervous and excited. Augusta Longbottom, Sirius greeted the woman with a formal bow. And you must be Neville. The boy nodded shyly. Hello. Augusta Longbottom studied Harry intently. So this is the Potter heir. You have your mother's eyes, young man. You knew my mother? Harry asked. Lily was a brilliant witch. One of the brightest I've ever known, and fiercely protective of those she loved. Augusta's expression softened momentarily before turning businesslike again. Blood Fong has explained the situation. Dumbledore has much to answer for. Indeed, the goblin agreed. We have prepared the ritual to break the siphon, but it will require the combined effort of both heirs. The Longbottom line and the Lo Fei line were once allies in the time of Morgana. That ancient connection may help sever Dumbledore's hold. Harry looked at Neville. Are you okay with this? Neville straightened his shoulders. Dumbledore put blocks on my magic too. Gran says it's why I've had trouble with accidental magic. If working together can fix us both, I'm ready. The ritual was complex, requiring Harry and Neville to stand on opposite points of a pentagram drawn in silver on the chamber floor while Sirius, Augusta, and 3 goblin ritualists chanted in a language Harry didn't recognize. Blood Fong had explained that breaking a 50-year-old spell would be difficult and potentially painful, but Harry was determined. When the pain comes, do not fight it, Morgana advised as the chanting began. Pain is the bindings breaking. It means freedom. The chamber filled with swirling magical energy, colors shifting from gold to silver to midnight blue. Harry felt the pressure building inside him again, but this time he welcomed it, imagining those yellow chains cracking under the strain. Then, suddenly, pain lanced through him, white-hot and all-consuming. He heard Neville cry out across the pentagram and knew he was feeling it too. Harry gritted his teeth, remembering Morgana's advice not to fight it. The chanting grew louder, more urgent. The pain intensified, and Harry felt something inside him stretching, straining, and then, with a sound like shattering glass that everyone in the chamber heard despite it occurring only in Harry's mind, the chains broke. Power rushed into him like a tidal wave, filling spaces he hadn't known were empty. It was overwhelming, exhilarating, terrifying, like being simultaneously drowned and reborn. Morgana's presence surged forward, not controlling but guiding, helping him channel the flood into manageable streams. Across the pentagram, Neville was surrounded by a corona of earthy green light. His face, though strained, showed wonder rather than pain now. His own bindings were breaking, releasing the power that had been locked away. "It's working," one of the goblin ritualists shouted over the magical turbulence now whipping through the chamber. The final stage of the ritual involved severing the siphon itself. Blood Fong stepped into the center of the pentagram, holding a silver dagger inscribed with runes. Together, he commanded Harry and Neville. "Direct your magic toward the center." Harry reached out with his newly freed power, visualizing a beam of blue-violet light extending from his core toward Bloodfang's dagger. Opposite him, Neville did the same with his green energy. Where the two beams met at the dagger's tip, a point of brilliant white light formed. Bloodfang raised the dagger high, now glowing with combined power, and brought it down in a slashing motion. Sindir Fura Magici. Harry felt something snap, a distant connection he'd never consciously recognized but had always been there, like a background hum suddenly silenced. The absence was jarring but liberating. For the first time in his life, his magic was truly, completely his own. The magical storm in the chamber subsided gradually. Harry found himself on his knees, breathing hard but feeling more alive than he ever had. Across from him, Neville was in a similar state, his round face flushed but grinning with newfound confidence. "It is done," Bloodfang announced. "The siphon is broken. The bindings are released. Both heirs are restored to their rightful power." Sirius helped Harry to his feet, his expression a mixture of pride and concern. "How do you feel?" "Different," Harry said, trying to find words for the sensation. "Bigger inside, somehow. Like I was looking at the world through a dirty window before, and now it's been cleaned." Augusta was helping Neville up. The boy looked transformed, standing straighter, his eyes brighter, magic visibly shimmering around him in a way Harry suspected was normally invisible but temporarily perceptible due to the ritual. "Dumbledore will have felt that," Bloodfang warned. The severing of such a long-established connection would have been noticeable. As if on cue, alarms began to sound throughout the bank. Distant shouts echoed down the corridors. "He comes," Augusta said grimly. "With ministry forces, I'd wager." Sirius drew his wand. "We're not running this time." Harry felt a surge of agreement from Morgana's presence. "The time for hiding is past. Now we stand and speak truth to power." "What's the plan?" Harry asked. Sirius exchanged a look with Augusta. "We need witnesses. People who will hear the truth before Dumbledore can spin his version of events." "The inheritance records," Bloodfang suggested. "They're incontrovertible. And the ritual results are automatically registered in the Ministry archives, even Dumbledore cannot alter those." "The press," Augusta added. "My house elf can deliver a message to Amelia Bones and to the Daily Prophet. The more eyes on this confrontation, the less room Dumbledore will have to maneuver." While Augusta quickly scribbled messages that her house elf, summoned with a snap of her fingers, whisked away, Bloodfang led them from the ritual chamber to the bank's main hall. "Better to meet him in public, with witnesses," the goblin advised. They had barely taken positions near the center of the hall, other bank customers watching curiously, when the main doors flew open with a bang. Albus Dumbledore strode in, resplendent in midnight blue robes spangled with silver stars, flanked by two red-robed aurors, wizard law enforcement, Sirius had explained to Harry. His face was a mask of grandfatherly concern, but Harry could now sense the fury and fear roiling beneath the surface. "Harry, my boy," Dumbledore called, his voice pitched to carry throughout the hall. "Thank goodness you're safe. We've been so worried." Harry stepped forward, Sirius's hand on his shoulder. "No, you haven't." A ripple of whispers spread through the gathering crowd. More people were entering the bank, drawn by the commotion, including, Harry noticed, a witch with an acid green quill that was writing by itself on a floating notepad. "I understand you're confused, Harry," Dumbledore continued smoothly. "Sirius has been filling your head with nonsense, I'm afraid. The poor man is not well, Azkaban has affected his mind." "My mind is perfectly clear, Dumbledore," Sirius growled. "Clear enough to help Harry discover what you've been doing to him, to his family line, for 50 years. These are serious accusations from a wanted criminal," one of the Aurors said, stepping forward with his wand half raised. "Auror Dawlish," Augusta Longbottom's voice cut through the tension. "Before you act, you might want to know that Amelia Bones is on her way. And that my grandson has also been a victim of Albus's interventions." Dumbledore's eyes flicked to Neville, then back to Harry. Something calculative shifted in his expression. "Augusta, you've been misled. I placed minor blocks on young Neville's accidental magic for his own protection, after the tragedy of his parents. Standard procedure for traumatized magical children." "That's a lie," Harry said, his voice stronger than he expected. "You placed bindings on him the same way you bound my magic. You've been stealing from magical bloodlines to fuel your own power." The crowd's whispers grew louder. The witch with the green quill was scribbling frantically now. "Harry, these fantasies," Dumbledore began, "are confirmed by goblin inheritance testing," Bloodfong interrupted, stepping forward with a stack of parchments. "The records don't lie, Chief Warlock. For 50 years, you have been siphoning magic from the Lo-Fey bloodline, first through distant relatives, then through Lily Evans Potter, and finally through her son." A commotion at the entrance drew everyone's attention. A square-jawed witch with a monocle strode in, flanked by more Aurors. "Amelia," Dumbledore greeted her, his tone carefully modulated. "This situation is under control." "Is it, Albus?" Amelia Bones raised an eyebrow. "I've received some very disturbing information about unauthorized magical bindings on heirs of ancient houses. Including my niece." This seemed to catch Dumbledore off guard. "Amelia, surely you understand. What I understand," she cut him off, "is that Gringotts has provided evidence of magical tampering with multiple children under your authority as Chief Warlock and Headmaster." She turned to Bloodfong. "The Ministry formally requests all inheritance and ritual records pertaining to this matter." "Happily provided," the goblin replied with that predatory smile. Dumbledore's grandfatherly facade was slipping. "This is a misunderstanding that should be addressed privately, not in this public forum." "I don't think so," Harry said, stepping forward again. "You've kept too many secrets for too long, Professor. You've been stealing my magic since before I was born. You left me with abusive relatives and planned to keep me ignorant of my heritage. You imprisoned my innocent godfather without a trial. And you bound my grandson's magic," Augusta added, after promising to protect him. "And my nieces," Amelia Bones said quietly. Dumbledore's eyes darted around the hall, taking in the growing crowd, the reporter, the official presence of the DMLE. Harry could almost see him calculating, weighing options. "He will try to escape," Morgana warned. "He still has much of your stolen power at his disposal." As if on cue, Dumbledore raised his hands in a gesture of conciliation. "I see these accusations have taken root. Rather than cause a scene, I will voluntarily step aside from my positions pending an investigation. Amelia, You may contact me at Hogwarts. You're not going anywhere, Sirius snarled, raising his wand. Dumbledore moved with surprising speed for an old man, whipping his wand from his sleeve. Forgive me, but I must insist. Harry felt Morgana surge forward in his mind. Now, heir. The words I give you. Without hesitation, Harry thrust out his hand, channeling his newly freed magic. Astirunjan min blod, Dragon his Megan Aet me. Blue-violet light erupted from his palm, enveloping Dumbledore in crackling energy. The old wizard's eyes widened in genuine shock as the spell, Morgana's spell, took hold. What is this? He gasped, struggling against the magical grip. Justice, Harry answered. I'm taking back what you stole. The crowd watched in stunned silence as streams of golden light began flowing from Dumbledore to Harry, the power of generations of the Le Fay line, returning to its rightful heir. Dumbledore seemed to age before their eyes, his back bending, his skin sagging as the stolen magic that had sustained him for decades abandoned him. When the last stream faded, Dumbledore collapsed to his knees, looking more like the centenarian he truly was than the vigorous wizard he had appeared to be moments before. Horrors, Amelia Bones said into the silence that followed. Take Albus Dumbledore into custody pending investigation of magical theft, unauthorized binding of minors, and abuse of office. As the Aurors moved to secure Dumbledore, the old wizard looked up at Harry, his blue eyes devoid of their customary twinkle. You don't understand what you've done, Harry. The greater good isn't served by stealing children's magic, Harry finished for him. Whatever you were trying to accomplish, you chose the wrong way to do it. As Dumbledore was led away, the crowd erupted in questions and exclamations. The reporter was practically vibrating with excitement, her quill smoking as it raced across the parchment. Well done, young heir, Morgana's voice whispered. This is only the beginning, but it is a worthy start. Sirius pulled Harry into a tight hug. Your parents would be so proud of you. Harry hugged him back fiercely, then reached out to include Neville, who had stood solidly beside him throughout the confrontation. We did it together. Augusta Longbottom watched the boys with approving eyes. Indeed you did. And there is much more to do. Amelia Bones approached them, her expression somber but kind. Mr. Potter, Mr. Longbottom. What you've experienced is unconscionable. The Ministry will conduct a full investigation. She turned to Sirius. As for you, Mr. Black, it seems we have some serious miscarriages of justice to address. Starting with my lack of trial? Sirius suggested with a hint of his old mischievous smile. Precisely. She nodded. I'll arrange for Veritaserum questioning immediately. If your claims are verified, you'll receive a full pardon and compensation. And guardianship of Harry, Sirius added firmly. Naturally, as his godfather. Amelia's gaze softened as she looked at Harry. You've shown extraordinary courage today, young man. Harry shook his head. I just wanted the truth. And my magic back. Sometimes truth is the most powerful magic of all, Blood Fong observed, joining their group. And speaking of truth, there is something else you should know, Heir Potter. The goblin handed Harry a new parchment, this one bearing the Gringotts seal. With the siphon broken and your magic restored, we were able to conduct a more thorough inheritance scan. It seems Morgana Le Fay is not your only significant ancestor. Harry scanned the parchment, his eyes widening. I'm related to Godric Gryffindor too. Through my father's line. Sirius barked a laugh. James would have loved that. His son, heir to both Gryffindor and Morgana Le Fay. Talk about bridging the divide. As the implications of the day's events began to spread through the wizarding world, Harry stood in the center of the Gringotts Hall, surrounded by his newfound family, Sirius, Neville, Augusta, and the ghostly presence of Morgana, and felt something he'd never truly experienced before. He felt like he belonged. Chapter 2, The Recovery. Focus, Harry. Feel the flow of your magic. Direct it, don't force it. 10-year-old Harry Potter stood in the center of the training room, sweat beading on his forehead as he concentrated on the wooden target dummy 30 feet away. 3 years of intensive training had transformed the scrawny, malnourished boy into a lean, confident young wizard. His wild black hair was still untamable, but his emerald eyes now glowed with power and purpose behind his round glasses. "I'm trying, Sirius," Harry muttered, frustration creeping into his voice. "But wandless casting is hard." Sirius Black leaned against the stone wall, arms crossed over his chest. 3 years had done wonders for him too. Proper nutrition had filled out his once gaunt frame, and regular sleep had erased the haunted shadows from his eyes. He still kept his hair long, now neatly tied back with a leather cord. "The wand makes it easier, sure," Sirius acknowledged. "But Morgana's heirs have always had an affinity for wandless magic. It's in your blood." Harry closed his eyes, drawing deep into his magical core. Since the ritual at Gringotts 3 years ago, his connection to his magic had grown exponentially. He could feel it now, a swirling vortex of blue-violet energy at his center, no longer constrained by Dumbledore's bindings. "Visualize the spell's path," Morgana's voice whispered in his mind. "Your intent shapes the magic, not the words." Harry opened his eyes and thrust his palm toward the dummy. Depulso. A concentrated wave of force erupted from his hand, striking the dummy dead center and sending it flying backward to shatter against the wall. "Yes." Sirius pumped his fist in the air. "That's it. Didn't I tell you?" Harry grinned, the exhilaration of successfully casting a 4th-year spell without a wand coursing through him. "That felt powerful?" Sirius supplied. "Natural," Harry corrected. "Like that's how magic is supposed to work." "For you, it is." Sirius clapped him on the shoulder. Morgana was famous for her wandless casting. The modern dependence on wands would have seemed bizarre to her. "It still does," Morgana commented dryly in Harry's head, making him smile. A knock at the door interrupted them. Neville Longbottom poked his head in, his round face flushed with excitement. "Sorry to interrupt, but you've got to come see this. Susan's managed the full transformation." Harry and Sirius followed Neville down the corridor of what had become known as Haven Manor, a sprawling estate in the Scottish Highlands hidden under the Fidelius charm with Sirius as secret keeper. Originally a Black family property, Sirius had extensively renovated it to serve as headquarters for what they now called the Heirs Collective. The manor's great hall had been converted into a multifunctional space for training, meetings, and socializing. As they entered, Harry immediately spotted Susan Bones standing in the center of an admiring circle, her auburn hair disheveled and her face glowing with triumph. "Do it again," encouraged Hannah Abbott, a blonde girl with pigtails who had joined their group 6 months ago after an inheritance test revealed Dumbledore's magical binding on her family line. Susan closed her eyes in concentration. Her form shimmered and contracted, and suddenly where the girl had stood was a sleek red fox with intelligent eyes and a white-tipped tail. "Brilliant!" Harry exclaimed as the fox pranced in a circle before transforming back into Susan. "That's 4 months faster than your dad managed it," Sirius told Harry, clearly impressed. The Bones family always did have an affinity for transformation magic. Susan flopped down on a nearby couch, exhausted but beaming. "It's weird seeing through Fox eyes. Everything's so sharp and gray." Color perception sacrificed for movement detection, came Hermione Granger's matter-of-fact voice as she entered from the library, several heavy tomes floating behind her. "Canids have dichromatic vision optimized for low light and detecting motion." Harry grinned at the bushy-haired girl who had become one of his closest friends. Hermione's addition to their group had been unexpected but invaluable. They'd found her purely by chance 2 years ago when Harry, disguised with glamour charms, had accompanied Sirius to Muggle London for supplies. Harry remembered the day vividly. They'd been in a bookshop when he'd felt a strange tingling sensation, like static electricity dancing across his skin. He'd turned to find a young girl with wild brown hair staring at him with wide eyes. "Your magic is different," she'd said without preamble. "It's blue-violet and swirly." Most people's magic is just a fuzzy cloud around them. Harry and Sirius had been stunned. This Muggle-born child could naturally see magical auras, a rare gift even among the oldest wizarding families. After meeting with her parents, both dentists who had been experiencing strange phenomena around their daughter for years, Hermione had become a regular visitor to Haven Manor, and eventually a full member of their growing collective when testing revealed she too had been subjected to Dumbledore's bindings. "How's the research going?" Harry asked, nodding toward the floating books. "Fascinating," Hermione replied, her eyes lighting up. "I've cross-referenced the texts from Morgana's vault with what we found in the Black Library. The historical manipulation is even more extensive than we thought." That had been their biggest discovery of the past year, Morgana's hidden vault. Following the whispered guidance of Morgana's consciousness in Harry's mind, they had located a secret repository beneath the ruins of an ancient stone circle in Wales. The vault contained not gold or jewels, but knowledge, hundreds of texts written by Morgana herself and her followers, documenting a history of magic that had been systematically erased from modern wizarding education. "Tell us over lunch," Sirius suggested. "Dobby will have a fit if we miss another meal." The mention of the house elf made Harry smile. Dobby had quite literally appeared out of nowhere 6 months ago, claiming he had sensed the great Harry Potter Sir breaking free of the Bad Whisker Wizard's magic and had come to offer his services. He'd been bound to the Malfoy family but had begged Harry to accept his bond transfer. After much debate and research into house elf magic, led by Hermione, who had initially been horrified by what she saw as slavery, they had discovered that house elves actually required a magical bond to stabilize their own considerable power. Harry had accepted Dobby's bond but insisted on treating him as staff rather than a servant, complete with days off and payment, an arrangement that still made Dobby burst into tears of gratitude on a regular basis. The group made their way to the manor's sun-filled dining room where Dobby had laid out a sumptuous lunch. Augusta Longbottom was already seated at the table, engaged in conversation with Amelia Bones, who had become a key ally in their cause. "Excellent timing," Augusta said as they entered. "Amelia was just updating me on the Wizengamot situation." Harry took his usual seat between Neville and Hermione. "Any progress on the Dumbledore investigation?" Amelia's normally stern expression was tinged with frustration. "It's like trying to nail fog to a wall. Even with the evidence from Gringotts, his supporters keep finding ways to delay the trial. After the confrontation at Gringotts 3 years ago, Dumbledore had initially been taken into custody, but his extensive network of influence had quickly come into play. While he had been forced to step down as chief warlock of the Wizengamot, he had retained his position as headmaster of Hogwarts through a technicality involving the school's charter and the board of governors, many of whom were still loyal to him. "He's still binding students, isn't he?" Susan asked her aunt quietly. Amelia nodded grimly. "We believe so, though it's become more subtle. The mandatory health checks for first years give him the opportunity. By the time they graduate, most never realize their magic has been limited." "It's bloody brilliant, in an evil sort of way," Sirius said, stabbing at a potato with unnecessary force. "Limit everyone's magical potential, and suddenly you look like a god among wizards." "Language, Sirius," Augusta chided automatically, though there was no real heat in it. "What about the international front?" Harry asked. In the years since discovering Dumbledore's manipulations, they had been carefully building a network of allies beyond Britain. "Mixed results," Amelia replied. "The French and Bulgarian ministries are taking our evidence seriously. The Americans are skeptical but investigating independently. The ICW is the real challenge. Dumbledore may have stepped down as Supreme Mugwump, but his influence there runs deep. We're making progress, though," Augusta pointed out. 3 years ago, Dumbledore was untouchable. Now at least half the wizarding world is questioning his methods, if not his motives." Harry nodded thoughtfully. Progress had indeed been steady, if slower than he'd hoped. After the initial shock of the Gringotts confrontation, Wizarding Britain had polarized, many blindly defending their beloved Dumbledore while others, especially families of children revealed to have been magically bound, demanding justice. What about the ritual tomorrow? Neville asked, bringing them back to more immediate concerns. Is everything prepared? Harry exchanged a glance with Hermione, who nodded confidently. We've triple-checked every component. With what we learned from Morgana's texts and the assistance from the goblins, it should work. Tomorrow would mark a significant escalation in their efforts. After years of identifying children affected by Dumbledore's bindings and developing a method to break them safely, they were finally ready to perform a mass unbinding ritual for 27 affected children who had been brought into their confidence. I still think it's risky doing it all at once, Amelia said, her forehead creased with worry. The magical discharge will be detectable for miles. That's part of the plan, Sirius reminded her. We want Dumbledore to know we're systematically undoing his work. It's time to be more direct in our opposition. And the location is secure, Harry added. The ritual circle at Haven is anchored in Morgana's magic now. Dumbledore can sense the discharge, but he won't be able to track it to us. After lunch, Harry and Hermione retreated to the ritual preparation room, a circular chamber with a domed ceiling that had once been the Manor's conservatory. The glass dome had been replaced with a lattice of crystal and silver that filtered and amplified magical energies. Are you nervous about tomorrow? Hermione asked as they checked the runic array etched into the floor. Harry considered the question. Not about the ritual itself. I'm confident in our preparation. He traced a finger along one of the runes, feeling the dormant power humming beneath the surface. I'm more concerned about what comes after. We're directly challenging Dumbledore now. He won't take that lightly. He's already trying to find us, Hermione pointed out. This just forces him to take us seriously as opposition, not just as runaways he needs to recapture. Harry nodded. Morgana says it's time. We've been building our strength, gathering knowledge and allies. The next phase is more confrontational. Hermione gave him a searching look. What's it like, having her in your head? Is it like possession? No, Harry said immediately. She's more like an advisor. A presence with memories and opinions, but she doesn't control me. If anything, she's been teaching me to have more control over myself, my magic, my emotions. It's just hard to imagine sharing your mind with someone else, Hermione admitted. Even someone as brilliant as Morgana Le Fay. Harry smiled at that. Hermione's initial skepticism about Morgana had transformed into something approaching academic hero worship as she devoured the sorceress's writings. The historical Morgana had been a magical theorist far ahead of her time, developing concepts that modern magical researchers were only beginning to rediscover. She's not always there, Harry explained. She sort of fades into the background most of the time. Becomes more present when I need guidance or when we're working with her specific magic. And she's really okay with what we're planning for Hogwarts. Harry laughed. She's positively gleeful about it. Apparently, the founders were friends of hers, even Slytherin, though they had their disagreements. She says Dumbledore has perverted their vision almost beyond recognition. The plan for Hogwarts was perhaps their boldest yet. With Harry's 11th birthday approaching in July, his Hogwarts letter would arrive automatically, generated by the ancient magic of the Founders' Book that recorded all magical children in Britain. Rather than avoiding Hogwarts as Sirius had initially suggested, they had decided Harry should attend, but on his own terms, not Dumbledore's. I still think it's risky, Hermione said, echoing Amelia's earlier concern. Putting you right in Dumbledore's territory. The school isn't really his territory, that's the whole point. Harry carefully adjusted one of the silver focus crystals at a junction in the runic array. Hogwarts belongs to the Founders and their heirs. As Gryffindor's heir through my father and with Morgana's connection to all four Founders, I have a legitimate claim to the castle that predates Dumbledore's authority as headmaster. Hermione didn't look entirely convinced, but before she could voice further objections, the door opened, and Luna Lovegood drifted in. Luna was their newest and perhaps strangest addition. The 9-year-old daughter of Xenophilius Lovegood, editor of the alternative wizarding magazine The Quibbler, Luna had an otherworldly quality that had initially made even Harry skeptical. But Morgana had immediately recognized something in the dreamy-eyed blonde girl. She has the sight, Morgana had explained when they first met Luna at a magical creature sanctuary 6 months ago. Not divination as it's commonly understood now, but the true sight, the ability to perceive beyond the veils of reality. The Nargles say the ritual will work perfectly, Luna announced in her sing-song voice, twirling a strand of her pale blonde hair. But they're worried about the Blackthorn Junction. They say the angle is 3 degrees off. Harry and Hermione exchanged glances. They'd learned not to dismiss Luna's seemingly nonsensical statements. Checking the Blackthorn focus rod at the north point of the ritual circle, Hermione discovered it was indeed slightly misaligned. 3 degrees exactly, she confirmed, making the adjustment. How do you do that, Luna? Luna just smiled serenely. I don't do anything. I just listen when others don't. The rest of the day passed in final preparations for the ritual. The 27 children who would participate had already arrived with their families and were being housed in the east wing of the manor. Most were students already attending Hogwarts who had come home for the weekend under various pretexts, though some were younger children whose families had discovered Dumbledore's bindings through inheritance testing at Gringotts. That evening, Harry found himself unable to sleep despite the busy day and the demands of the ritual ahead. He slipped out of his bedroom and made his way to the manor's highest tower, a place he often retreated to when he needed space to think. The night was clear, stars blazing against the velvet backdrop of the Scottish sky. Harry leaned against the stone parapet, letting the cool air wash over him. Troubled thoughts keep you from rest, young heir. Morgana's voice was gentle in his mind. Over the years, their connection had deepened and clarified. Harry no longer found her presence startling or intrusive but comforting, a link to a heritage and history he might otherwise never have known. Just thinking about how much has changed, Harry replied aloud, knowing no one else was around to hear him apparently talking to himself. 3 years ago, I was living in a cupboard, not knowing magic existed. Now I'm planning to challenge the most powerful wizard in Britain. You have grown much in these years, Morgana observed. Not just in magical strength but in wisdom. I've had good teachers. Harry smiled, thinking of Sirius's patient guidance, Augusta's stern lessons in wizarding politics, Amelia's insights into justice and law, and of course, Morgana's ancient wisdom. The path ahead will not be easy, she cautioned. Dumbledore has spent decades building his power and influence. He will not relinquish them willingly. I know. Harry watched a shooting star trace a silver path across the sky. But what he's done, stealing magic, binding children's potential, manipulating events from the shadows, it has to be stopped. And you feel ready for this burden? Harry considered the question carefully. I don't think anyone is ever really ready for something like this. But I'm not alone. We've built something special here, not just a group fighting against Dumbledore, but a community rediscovering what magic could and should be. That is why you will succeed where others have failed, Morgana said, a note of pride in her mental voice. You understand that true power comes not from dominance but from connection, to your magic, to others, to the world around you. I learned that from you, Harry acknowledged. Your writings about magical harmony and balance, they're so different from what's taught now. Dumbledore's system divides everything into light and dark, permitted and forbidden. Your approach was more holistic. Magic simply is, Morgana agreed. Like water, it can nourish or drown, like fire, it can warm or burn. The intent and wisdom of the wielder determine the outcome, not arbitrary classifications. Their conversation continued late into the night, ranging from magical theory to history to more personal reflections. These quiet dialogues with Morgana had become precious to Harry, a chance to learn not just from her knowledge but from her perspective spanning centuries. When he finally returned to his bed in the early hours of the morning, Harry fell asleep quickly, his mind settled and his resolve strengthened for what lay ahead. The morning of the ritual dawned bright and clear. By noon, the 27 children and their families had gathered in the main hall for final instructions. They ranged in age from 7 to 16, each confirmed through goblin testing to have had their magic bound or limited by Dumbledore. Harry stood before them, suddenly conscious of how young he must appear to the older children. But 3 years of training and preparation had given him a presence that belied his age. "Thank you all for trusting us with something so important," he began. "What was done to you, to all of us, was wrong. Today, we take back what's ours." He explained the ritual process again, emphasizing what they would experience. "The breaking of bindings isn't painless," he warned. "You'll feel pressure, then a sharp sensation as the blocks shatter. Your magic will rush in to fill spaces that have been empty or restricted. It might feel overwhelming at first, but we'll guide you through it." A girl of about 15 raised her hand. "Will we be able to control it afterward? My parents are worried about accidental magic outbursts." "That's why you'll all stay here for at least a week after the ritual," Harry explained. "We have tutors ready to help you adjust to your full magical potential. It would be irresponsible to remove the bindings without teaching you to handle the results." This approach had been Amelia's suggestion, and Harry was grateful for it. The last thing they needed was dozens of newly unbound magical children losing control across Britain. Not only would it validate Dumbledore's claim that he bound magic for safety, but it might endanger the children themselves. At precisely noon, the participants took their positions in the ritual chamber. The 27 children stood on marked positions around the outer circle, with their families watching from a gallery above. In the center circle stood Harry, Neville, Susan, and Hermione, the core members of the Heirs collective who would channel and direct the ritual's power. Luna Lovegood moved among the participants, adjusting their positions slightly with dreamlike assurance. "Your magic needs to flow like this," she would murmur, gently turning a shoulder or repositioning a hand. When everyone was in place, Sirius sealed the chamber doors and took his position at the northern point. As the adult with the strongest magical connection to Harry through the godfather bond, he would serve as an anchor and safety measure if anything went wrong. "Ready?" Harry asked his friends in the center circle. They nodded, eyes bright with determination and just a touch of nerves. They had practiced the ritual components dozens of times, but never with the full array of participants or the actual intent of breaking magical bindings. Harry raised his hands, and the others followed suit, forming a smaller circle within the larger one. "We begin," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. The ritual started with a simple chant, words in Old English that Morgana had taught them, calling upon the fundamental forces of magic that existed long before wands and incantations. As the chant built, the runic array etched into the floor began to glow with golden light. Harry felt Morgana's consciousness rise closer to the surface of his mind, not taking control but lending her power and knowledge more directly than usual. Under her guidance, he began weaving his magic through the ritual space, connecting first to Neville, then Susan, then Hermione, forming a core of power at the center. From that core, tendrils of magic extended outward, touching each of the 27 participants in turn. Harry could see the bindings now, ugly, constrictive knots of foreign magic wrapped around each child's core. Some were crude and obvious, while others were subtle, woven with insidious skill to masquerade as natural limitations. "Dumbledore's work has grown more sophisticated over the decades," Morgana observed. "The older children have more complex bindings." "We'll start with the youngest," Harry murmured to his friends. "Their bindings are simpler." Together, they directed the ritual's power toward the 7- and 8-year-olds in the circle. The golden light intensified, focusing on the foreign magic. There was resistance, Dumbledore's bindings fighting to maintain their hold, but against the combined power of Harry, Morgana, and the others, they began to crack. One by one, the younger children gasped as their bindings shattered. Magic visibly rushed into them, manifesting as swirls of colored light specific to each child. A young boy's hand sparked with tiny lightning bolts. A girl's hair floated upward as if underwater. Another child was momentarily lifted several inches off the ground. "Control the flow," Harry instructed, and the center circle adjusted their magic to help the newly unbound children stabilize. They moved methodically through the age groups, breaking bindings and then stabilizing each child before moving to the next. The process grew more challenging with the older students, whose bindings had been in place longer and were more thoroughly integrated with their natural magic. By the time they reached the oldest participants, a 16-year-old Ravenclaw boy and 15-year-old Hufflepuff girl, sweat was pouring down Harry's face from the effort of maintaining the ritual's integrity. But Morgana's presence steadied him, her ancient knowledge guiding his relatively inexperienced hands. The final bindings broke with an audible crack, like ice splitting on a frozen lake. A shockwave of magical energy pulsed outward from the ritual circle, powerful enough to make the crystal dome above them ring like a bell. Containment. Sirius called from the northern point, raising his wand to strengthen the chamber's shielding as excess magic rebounded through the space. For a moment, chaos reigned. Several children were crying, not in pain but from the overwhelming sensation of their full magic flowing freely for the first time. Others were laughing in disbelief as they experienced their true potential. Objects around the room levitated spontaneously. The air filled with sparks and swirls of light as accidental magic manifested in dozens of ways. Gradually, under the guidance of Harry and the core circle, the chaos settled. The wild magic was contained and redirected, channeled back into the earth through the ritual circle's grounding elements. It worked, Hermione breathed, her face flushed with exertion and triumph. All 27 bindings broken. And I'd bet my last galleon that Dumbledore felt every single one, Sirius added with grim satisfaction. The aftermath of the ritual was both joyous and challenging. As predicted, the sudden unleashing of previously bound magic resulted in control issues for many of the children. The manor became a temporary school, with designated teachers helping each child adjust to their new magical reality. "It's like I've been seeing in black and white, and suddenly everything's in color," explained a 13-year-old Gryffindor as he struggled to perform a simple levitation charm that was now sending objects rocketing to the ceiling. "Your magic is responding to your emotions more strongly now," Harry explained, demonstrating the measured control he'd developed under Morgana's tutelage. "You need to recalibrate your expectations of how much power to put into each spell." 5 days after the ritual, while most of the children were still adjusting to their unbound magic, a more dramatic development occurred. Harry was working with a group of the younger children on basic control exercises when Amelia Bones burst into the room, her normally composed face tight with urgency. "Harry, we need you in the communications room immediately," she said. "Dumbledore has made his move." Harry quickly handed the class over to Susan and followed Amelia through the manor to what had once been a parlor but was now their tactical center. A large enchanted map of Britain dominated one wall, with magical markers showing the locations of allies and known opponents. A specialized communications mirror, developed by combining Sirius's knowledge of the mirrors he'd used with James Potter and techniques from Morgana's texts, allowed secure conversations with key contacts throughout the wizarding world. Sirius, Augusta, and several adult allies were already gathered around the main table, their expressions grim. "What's happened?" Harry asked. Sirius gestured to the latest edition of the Daily Prophet spread on the table. The headline blared, "Dumbledore announces Hogwarts reform, new measures to protect students from dangerous magical surge." Scanning the article quickly, Harry felt his stomach tighten. Dumbledore was using the magical discharge from their ritual, which had indeed been detected widely, as justification for implementing new, protective measures, at Hogwarts. These included mandatory magical screening for all students, restrictions on certain types of magic for safety, and a revised curriculum that would further limit access to advanced magical knowledge. "He's using our action as an excuse to tighten his control," Augusta said, her voice tight with anger. "Clever," Harry acknowledged reluctantly. "He's spinning this as protection rather than restriction." "There's more," Amelia added, pointing to a smaller article lower on the page. "The Wisendamat has fast-tracked approval for ministry intervention at Hogwarts if dangerous magical experimentation is detected. It's aimed directly at us. And look who's quoted extensively in support," Sirius growled, jabbing at a name in the article. "Lucius Malfoy." Harry wasn't surprised. While many families had rallied to their cause after discovering Dumbledore's manipulations, others had aligned more firmly with the headmaster, either out of genuine belief in his leadership or, as in Malfoy's case, opportunistic political calculation. "So what's our response?" Harry asked, looking around at the assembled adults. There was a moment of silence as they considered the question. It was Sirius who finally spoke. "I think it's time for Phase 2, he said. "We've been reactive long enough. Time to take the initiative." Phase 2 was what they had been planning for months, a direct challenge to Dumbledore's authority at Hogwarts itself, timed to coincide with Harry's entrance to the school. It was bold, potentially dangerous, and would force the wizarding world to choose sides definitively. "Are we ready, though?" Amelia questioned. "We've made progress, but Dumbledore still has significant support." "We'll never have perfect conditions," Augusta countered. "And now he's using our own actions against us. If we wait longer, he'll only entrench himself further." Harry closed his eyes briefly, consulting the presence in his mind. "Morgana." "The time approaches, young heir," came the measured response. "But there is one more piece needed before the challenge can succeed." "We need to find your repository," Harry said aloud, opening his eyes. "The main one, not just the vault we discovered." Everyone turned to him. They had known for some time that the Welsh vault was only a small collection, that somewhere Morgana had hidden her principal archive of knowledge and power, a repository that could provide definitive evidence of both her true history and Dumbledore's manipulations. "You've had another vision of its location?" Augusta asked. Harry shook his head. "Not exactly. But Morgana says it's essential to our success. The problem is, the location is protected by multiple layers of magic. Even she can't simply tell me where it is, the knowledge has to be earned through a series of trials. More riddles and tests," Sirius sighed. "Your ancestor had a flair for the dramatic, Harry. I designed the protections to ensure only a worthy heir could access the repository," Morgana explained in Harry's mind, sounding slightly defensive. "Knowledge without wisdom is dangerous." "She says it was to test the worthiness of her heirs," Harry relayed, suppressing a smile. "But I think I've figured out the first step. The ritual we just performed has strengthened my connection to her magic. I can sense a direction now, a pull." "Where?" Sirius asked. "Wales again, but further north than the first vault. Near the sea." "Anglesey," Augusta said immediately. "The ancient center of druidic practice in Britain. It would make sense for Morgana to hide her most important repository there." "When do we leave?" Sirius was already on his feet, ever ready for action. "Tomorrow," Harry decided. "The children here are stable enough now, and this can't wait. Dumbledore is escalating, and we need to be prepared to respond." That evening, Harry briefed Neville, Hermione, and Susan on the situation. They would accompany him to Anglesey along with Sirius and a small team of adult allies. "What about me?" Luna asked dreamily, appearing seemingly from nowhere as they discussed preparations in the library. Harry hesitated. Luna's gifts were undeniable, but she was still only 9, and the potential dangers of this mission were significant. "The seer child should come," Morgana advised. "Her perception may reveal what remains hidden to others." "All right, Luna," Harry decided. "But you stay close to Sirius or me at all times." "The Nargles already told me I'm coming," Luna said with a serene smile. "They've packed my bag with dirigible plum earrings to help us see through ancient illusions." Hermione opened her mouth, likely to point out that dirigible plums had no documented magical properties relating to illusions, but caught herself. After 2 years of friendship with Luna, they'd all learned that her seemingly nonsensical statements often contained genuine insights, just expressed in her unique way. The expedition set out at dawn the next day. To avoid magical detection, they traveled the Muggle way for most of the journey, a private car hired by Amelia taking them to the coast, then a chartered boat to Anglesey. Only when they reached the island did they risk using magic, with Harry following the pull in his mind that grew stronger with each step toward their destination. The trail led them to a remote section of coastline where towering cliffs faced the Irish Sea. Waves crashed against rocks below, and seabirds wheeled overhead, their cries carried away on the salt-laden wind. "There's nothing here," Hermione said, looking around at the empty landscape. "Yes, there is," Luna contradicted, putting on her dirigible plum earrings. "Can't you see it? The air is folded." Harry knew exactly what she meant. To his Morgana-enhanced perception, the space before them seemed to bend in impossible ways, as if reality itself was pleated like fabric, hiding something in the folds. "It's here," he confirmed. "But getting in won't be simple. The first trial requires blood freely given, but not yours alone," Morgana instructed. 4 pillars of magic must be represented: earth, air, fire, and water. Harry relayed these instructions to the others. "Classic elemental magic," Sirius nodded. "The fourfold division predates modern magical theory by millennia. So we need 4 people, each representing an element," Susan clarified. "Not just any 4, Harry explained as Morgana's knowledge flowed through him. "Each must have a natural affinity for their element. Neville is earth, his connection to plants and growing things. Hermione is air, knowledge and intellect. I'm water," Luna volunteered. "Flowing and seeing beyond surfaces. And I'm fire," Harry finished. "Will and transformation." The 4 children positioned themselves according to Harry's instructions, forming a square at points where the folded reality seemed most distorted. Each pricked their finger with a small knife Sirius provided, allowing drops of blood to fall onto the ground. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the earth beneath their feet trembled. The air shimmered like a heat mirage, and the folded reality began to unfold. Where there had been empty clifftop, a structure materialized, a circular stone building with no visible entrance, its walls covered in spiraling symbols that shifted and changed as they watched. "Bloody hell," Sirius breathed. "A genuine Morganian sanctuary." Harry approached the smooth stone wall, guided by the presence in his mind. When he placed his palm against the surface, the stone rippled like water, and an opening formed. "The second trial awaits inside," he said, turning back to the others. "Morgana says it's a test of intent and will. We need to be absolutely clear about why we seek her knowledge." One by one, they stepped through the opening. The interior was a single circular chamber with a domed ceiling that somehow captured and amplified the daylight from outside, filling the space with a soft, diffuse glow. The floor was a mosaic depicting a tree with roots and branches that spanned the entire chamber. At the tree's heart stood a pedestal bearing a small silver bowl. "Approach the vessel of truth," Morgana instructed. Harry moved to the pedestal, the others following cautiously behind. "What now?" Hermione whispered, her voice unconsciously hushed as if in a sacred space. "Each must speak their true intent for seeking my knowledge. The vessel will judge your hearts." After relaying these instructions, Harry went first. "I seek Morgana's knowledge to restore balance to magic, to break the artificial constraints that divide and diminish our potential, and to stop those who would steal power for themselves." As he spoke, a swirl of blue-violet light rose from the bowl, surrounding him momentarily before settling back. Neville stepped forward next. "I seek this knowledge to heal what's been broken, in myself, in others, in the very understanding of magic itself." Green light enveloped him, then returned to the bowl. Hermione's voice was steady. "I seek knowledge to build bridges between old wisdom and new discoveries, to learn what has been hidden and share it with those who will use it wisely." Golden light swirled around her. Luna's turn came last. "I seek to see truly and help others see, beyond veils and masks and comfortable lies." Silver light danced around her dreamy form. As Luna's light settled back into the bowl, the combined colors began to swirl together, forming a miniature whirlpool of magic that rose up and expanded, filling the entire chamber with shifting, pulsing light. The mosaic tree on the floor seemed to come alive, its branches and roots moving, growing, rearranging the floor. Sirius called out in warning, pulling Luna back as a section of mosaic sank downward, revealing a spiral staircase descending into darkness. "The third trial awaits below," Morgana said. "A test of resilience and adaptability." "I'll go first," Harry insisted when Sirius moved to lead the way. "Morgana's magic will recognize me." The staircase wound deep into the earth, far deeper than seemed possible given their proximity to the sea. The walls were lined with the same shifting symbols as the exterior, but here they gave off a faint phosphorescent glow. Finally, they emerged into a vast underground cavern that took their breath away. The space stretched beyond what should have been physically possible beneath the relatively small structure above. Enormous crystal columns rose from floor to ceiling, each pulsing with a different colored light. Between the columns stood rows upon rows of bookshelves, display cases containing artifacts, and worktables set up as if their owner had just stepped away momentarily. "Morgana's true repository," Hermione whispered in awe. "It must contain the accumulated knowledge of centuries." "And look," Neville pointed to one side of the cavern, where a clear pool reflected the crystal lights above. Beside it grew plants that should not have been able to survive underground, rare magical species, some of which Neville recognized from herbology texts as being extinct in the modern world. But Harry's attention was drawn to the center of the cavern, where a raised dais supported what appeared to be a throne carved from a single piece of obsidian. Before the throne stood another pedestal, this one bearing not a bowl but a crystal orb about the size of a quaffle. "The heart of memory," Morgana's voice was filled with emotion. "My greatest creation and the repository of my most important knowledge." Harry approached the orb cautiously. As he drew near, it began to glow, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. "What's the third trial?" he asked aloud. "There is no third trial," Morgana admitted. "Not as you understand it. Coming this far, finding the sanctuary, passing the tests of blood and intent, was trial enough. The heart is yours to command, young heir." Harry placed his hands on either side of the crystal sphere, not quite touching it. "What does it do?" "It contains memories, not just mine, but those of many who knew the truth. Memories of how magic truly works, of the history that has been rewritten, of Merlin and Arthur and the founding of Hogwarts. And most crucially for your purpose, evidence of how magical knowledge has been systematically suppressed and controlled over centuries." "Like a pensieve?" Sirius asked, having overheard Harry's half of the conversation. "More comprehensive," Harry explained. "Morgana says it can project memories in ways that can be witnessed by many at once, and it contains memories from multiple sources, not just her own." "That's exactly what we need," Hermione said excitedly. "Verifiable historical evidence that can't be dismissed as hearsay or interpretation." They spent hours exploring the repository, each drawn to different aspects. Hermione was entranced by the library, which contained texts in languages she didn't even recognize. Neville was fascinated by the living plants and the detailed records of their properties. Luna wandered among the crystal columns, sometimes carrying on whispered conversations with entities only she could perceive. Harry divided his time between examining the heart of memory with Sirius and exploring a section of the repository that contained what appeared to be weapons and defensive artifacts. "These were created to combat magical theft and binding," he explained, holding up a slender wand-like object made of a dark wood with silver inlay. "Morgana designed them specifically to detect and disrupt the type of magic Dumbledore uses. She was fighting this battle even in her own time, wasn't she?" Sirius realized. "Always," Morgana confirmed in Harry's mind. "Merlin sought to categorize and control magic, to make it more civilized and less wild. I fought to preserve the old ways, the deep connection to magical forces that transcends human categorization." By the time they prepared to leave, each carrying carefully selected items from the repository, Harry felt a new sense of confidence and purpose. They now had not just knowledge but tangible proof, evidence that could sway even those who had been reluctant to challenge Dumbledore's authority. "So what's next?" Neville asked as they ascended the spiral staircase. "We have the knowledge, the tools. What's our plan for Hogwarts? Harry smiled, a plan already forming in his mind. We're going to claim my birthright, not just as Morgana's heir, but as an heir of Godric Gryffindor too. We're going to remind Hogwarts who its true masters are. Back at Haven Manor, the findings from Morgana's repository caused a sensation among their allies. The Heart of Memory proved to be even more valuable than they had hoped, capable of projecting historical scenes with such clarity and detail that viewers felt as if they were truly present. In the weeks that followed, they used these memories to recruit more allies, particularly among older wizarding families who had been skeptical of their claims about Dumbledore but could not deny the evidence of history literally playing out before their eyes. One memory in particular proved devastating to Dumbledore's reputation, a scene from 1943 showing a young Albus Dumbledore discovering an ancient text describing the blood magic siphoning technique he would later employ. The memory showed his face transfigured by naked ambition as he realized the potential power he could gain. That was when it started, Harry explained to the assembled allies after showing them this memory. He spent years researching and developing the technique before implementing it. By the time he confronted Grindelwald in 1945, he was already siphoning magic from at least 2 ancient bloodlines. The implications were staggering. Dumbledore's famous defeat of Grindelwald, the cornerstone of his reputation as a magical powerhouse, had been accomplished using stolen power. As July approached, bringing Harry's 11th birthday and his official Hogwarts letter, the heirs collective finalized their plans for what they now called the Reclamation. Dumbledore will expect you to either avoid Hogwarts entirely or arrive as a regular first year, Amelia noted during one of their strategy sessions. Either way, he'll have plans to regain control over you. Which is why we won't do either, Harry replied. I'll accept my place at Hogwarts, but not as a student under Dumbledore's authority. I'll claim my position as an heir of the Founders. The legal groundwork had already been laid. Gringotts had provided certified documentation of Harry's lineage as both Gryffindor's heir, through the Potter line, and Morgana's magical heir, with her historical connections to all 4 Founders. Wizarding law, particularly the ancient statutes governing Hogwarts itself, clearly established the rights of Founders' heirs regarding the school. On July 31st, Harry's 11th birthday, the Hogwarts letter arrived as expected, delivered not by Owl but by Minerva McGonagall herself, who appeared at the edge of Haven Manor's wards looking distinctly uncomfortable. Sirius met her at the boundary, wand casually at his side. Minerva. This is unexpected. Sirius. She nodded stiffly. I've come to deliver Mr. Potter's Hogwarts letter personally, as instructed by the headmaster. And to assess our defenses and Harry's situation, no doubt, Sirius added with a knowing look. McGonagall's lips thinned. I have concerns about Mr. Potter's education and well-being. Albus believes, I'm sure he does, Sirius interrupted. But Harry is healthy, happy, and receiving an excellent magical education. Would you like to see for yourself? After a moment's hesitation, McGonagall nodded. Sirius temporarily adjusted the wards to allow her entry, though with significant restrictions on her ability to gather information about the manor's defenses or exact location. Harry met them in the entrance hall, deliberately dressed in formal robes bearing both the Potter and Black crests, with a subtle design element incorporating Morgana's symbol, a raven with a crescent moon. Professor McGonagall, he greeted her politely. Thank you for delivering my letter personally. McGonagall studied him intently, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Mr. Potter. You look, well. I am well, Professor. Would you like some tea? We can discuss Hogwarts arrangements. The surprise on her face was evident. You intend to attend, then? The headmaster was concerned you might refuse. I would never refuse my place at Hogwarts, Harry said sincerely. It's my heritage, after all. They settled in one of the manor's smaller reception rooms, where Dobby proudly served tea and biscuits. Harry accepted his Hogwarts letter, reading it through before setting it aside. Before we discuss details, Professor, I believe in transparency. You should know that I am fully aware of what Albus Dumbledore did to me and my family line. Harry's voice was calm but firm. I know about the magical bindings and the power siphoning that continued for 50 years. McGonagall's teacup froze halfway to her lips. Mr. Potter, these are serious allegations that the headmaster has repeatedly denied. They're not allegations, Professor. They're documented facts, verified by Gringotts inheritance testing and magical forensics. Harry nodded to Sirius, who handed McGonagall a folder containing copies of the relevant documentation. I would like you to review these at your leisure, Harry continued. But more importantly, I want you to know that I bear no ill will toward Hogwarts itself or its faculty, including you. My issue is specifically with Albus Dumbledore and the system of magical suppression he has implemented. McGonagall set down her cup, visibly struggling with conflicting loyalties. Why are you telling me this? Because I respect you, Professor, and because you deserve to know the truth before what happens next. Harry leaned forward slightly. I will be coming to Hogwarts on September 1st, but not as a regular first-year student. I will be claiming my rights as an heir of Godric Gryffindor and the magical heir of Morgana Le Fay, who had connections to all four founders. That's unprecedented, McGonagall managed. Actually, it's very precedent, Sirius corrected. The Hogwarts Charter specifically outlines the rights and privileges of founders' heirs. They've simply never been invoked in modern times because the lines were thought to be extinct or untraceable. What exactly do you intend to do? McGonagall asked, her Scottish accent becoming more pronounced with stress. Reform Hogwarts, Harry answered simply. Return it to the original vision of the founders, a place where all types of magic are respected and taught, where students' potential is nurtured rather than constrained. And Albus? Will be given a choice, Harry said. Step down gracefully or face a formal magical challenge for control of Hogwarts. McGonagall set the folder down carefully. You're only 11, Mr. Potter. Regardless of your heritage, do you truly believe you can challenge one of the most powerful wizards of our age? Harry met her gaze steadily. I don't have to match him spell for spell, Professor. The magic of Hogwarts itself will recognize my claim if it's valid. And I won't be alone. I see. McGonagall's expression was unreadable. And what role do you see for the current faculty in this, reformed Hogwarts? That depends on them, Sirius answered. Those who have knowingly participated in Dumbledore's binding of students will need to answer for that. Those who were unaware or opposed to such practices would be welcome to continue, with expanded freedom to teach their subjects properly. McGonagall was silent for a long moment. I have served Hogwarts for over 30 years. I have respected and trusted Albus Dumbledore for longer than that. She paused. But I have also had questions. Concerns that were dismissed or explained away. Such as? Harry prompted gently. The declining rates of magical innovation. The increasing difficulty students have with certain branches of magic that were once commonly mastered. The strange gaps in our curriculum that appeared over the decades. She looked at the folder again. If what you claim is true. Review the evidence, Professor, Harry suggested. And look into the Hogwarts Charter regarding founders' heirs. I'm not asking you to choose sides now. Just to be prepared for what's coming, and to consider where your true loyalty lies, with Dumbledore, or with Hogwarts itself and the students in your care. As McGonagall departed an hour later, folder tucked securely under her arm, Sirius gave Harry an approving nod. Well handled. You gave her just enough to think about without revealing our full plans. Do you think she'll tell Dumbledore everything? Sirius considered. Some, but not all. Minerva has her own sense of right and wrong. If she starts investigating and finds supporting evidence for our claims. He shrugged. She might become an ally, or at least not an active opponent. Throughout August, preparations for the reclamation accelerated. Harry and the core members of the Heirs Collective practiced daily with the artifacts they'd brought from Morgana's repository. Hermione coordinated with their international allies to ensure outside support if needed. Neville worked with Augusta to secure commitments from key Wisengamot members to prevent ministry interference. 1 week before September 1st, they received an unexpected message via their secure communication mirror. "It's Professor McGonagall," Hermione reported, surprise evident in her voice as she recognized the caller. Harry joined her at the mirror. "Professor. This is unexpected." McGonagall's face in the mirror was drawn and serious. "Mr. Potter. What you gave me. I've been investigating. Testing students discreetly." She paused, visibly struggling with emotion. 3 of my Gryffindors showed signs of the exact magical bindings you described. When I removed them, the improvement in their casting was immediate and dramatic. "I'm sorry, Professor," Harry said quietly. "Don't be. I needed to know." Her lips formed a tight line. "I've taught alongside Albus for decades. Trusted him. And all this time." She took a steadying breath. "I cannot in good conscience continue to support his leadership. But a direct confrontation would only lead to my removal before I can help the affected students." "What are you proposing?" Harry asked. "A compromise. I will remain outwardly neutral until your arrival. In the meantime, I'm documenting every case I can find and quietly preparing other faculty members who might be sympathetic." Her expression hardened. "But I want your word that the students will be your priority. Whatever confrontation comes with Albus must not put them at risk." "You have my word," Harry promised. "The students are why we're doing this." With McGonagall's tacit support, the final pieces of their plan fell into place. By August 31st, everything was ready. That evening, Harry gathered with the core members of the Heirs Collective, Neville, Hermione, Susan, and Luna, who would not officially start Hogwarts until the following year but insisted on being part of the reclamation. "Tomorrow changes everything," Harry told them as they sat around the fire in Haven Manor's Great Hall. "Once we challenge Dumbledore publicly, there's no going back. The wizarding world will have to choose sides. We've known that from the beginning," Neville reminded him. "And we've prepared as best we can." "What if it goes wrong?" Hermione asked, practical as always. "What's our contingency plan?" "International port keys are prepared for everyone," Sirius assured her. "And our allies in France and Bulgaria are ready to offer sanctuary if needed. But I don't think it will come to that." "It won't," Luna said with dreamy certainty. "The castle will remember her true heirs. The stones have been waiting." Harry smiled at her confidence. Over the past 3 years, Luna's seemingly nonsensical statements had proven accurate too often to dismiss. "Morgana," he asked silently. "Any final guidance?" "Trust in your preparation, young heir," came the response. "But remember, this confrontation is about more than removing Dumbledore from power. It is about beginning a transformation in how magic is understood and practiced. Keep the larger goal in mind, even in the heat of conflict." Harry nodded, then raised his glass in a toast. "To the reclamation. To Hogwarts as it was meant to be." "To Hogwarts," they echoed, glasses clinking in the firelight. As the others drifted off to bed, Harry remained by the fire, contemplating the journey that had brought him to this point. From a boy in a cupboard to the heir of Morgana and Gryffindor, preparing to challenge one of the most powerful and respected wizards in the world. "The boy who lived becomes the man who changed everything," Morgana observed with a hint of pride. "Sleep, young heir. Tomorrow will demand all your strength and clarity." Taking her advice, Harry finally retired to his room. As he drifted off to sleep, his last thought was of Hogwarts, not as it was under Dumbledore's control, but as it could be, as it should be. A true center of magical learning where every student could reach their full potential. Tomorrow, that vision would begin to take shape. Chapter 3, The Reckoning. The Hogwarts Express gleamed scarlet against the grey London morning, steam billowing along platform 9 3/4. Harry Potter stood a short distance from the train, watching families say their tearful goodbyes while students lugged trunks and owl cages aboard. Look at all these kids, Sirius murmured beside him. None of them have any idea what's about to happen. Harry nodded, scanning the crowd. Most of the students rushing about would be experiencing their full magical potential for the first time once Dumbledore's systemic bindings were broken. The thought fueled his determination. Stick to the plan, Harry reminded his godfather. No matter what happens, the students come first. Sirius squeezed his shoulder. James and Lily would be so proud of you. Harry wore simple black robes with no house colors or emblems, a deliberate choice. He wouldn't be sorted like a regular first year. He wasn't attending as a student under Dumbledore's authority, but as an heir claiming his birthright. There's Neville and Augusta, Harry nodded toward the far end of the platform. Neville caught his eye and gave a subtle nod. They'd arrive separately and make no obvious connection until they reached Hogwarts. Better not to telegraph their alliance before the right moment. Hermione's already aboard, Sirius reported, having spotted her bushy hair through a compartment window. And Susan's just arrived with Amelia. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Their core team was in position, with adult allies strategically placed both on the train and at Hogwarts itself. McGonagall had kept her word, quietly identifying sympathetic faculty members while documenting cases of magically bound students. The pieces align, Morgana's voice whispered in Harry's mind. Remember, young heir, when the moment comes, Hogwarts itself will respond to your call if your intent is true. It's time, Harry said, checking the enchanted watch Sirius had given him for his birthday. The train leaves in 10 minutes. Sirius pulled him into a fierce hug. Be careful. Dumbledore is cornered and desperate. That makes him dangerous. I know. Harry returned the embrace. But he's not the only one with allies. With a final nod to his godfather, Harry boarded the train, moving purposefully toward the rear compartment they'd selected in advance. Students parted before him, many doing double takes as they recognized his famous scar. That's Harry Potter. Where's he been all these years? Isn't he shorter than you'd expect? Harry ignored the whispers, though he noted with satisfaction that most students seemed merely curious rather than fearful. Dumbledore's campaign to paint him as potentially unstable, subtly woven into daily prophet articles over the past 3 years, hadn't entirely taken hold. He found Hermione in their chosen compartment, already dressed in Hogwarts robes without house colors. She looked up from her book as he entered. Right on schedule, she said, moving her stack of books to make room. No problems. None. You. Susan and Neville are in position. Luna sends her regards from Haven, she's monitoring the mirror network with Sirius. Hermione fidgeted with the spine of her book. I still think she should have come. She's safer at Haven, Harry reminded her. And we need someone we trust completely to coordinate with our allies if things go sideways. As the train lurched into motion, more students peered curiously into their compartment. Some brave souls even knocked, asking if they could meet the famous Harry Potter, but Hermione politely turned them away. We need the privacy, she explained to a group of disappointed third years. Perhaps another time. When the compartment door slid open again 30 minutes into the journey, Harry expected more curious students. Instead, a pale boy with white blonde hair stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 larger boys who resembled junior bodyguards. So it's true, the blonde boy drawled. Harry Potter has decided to grace Hogwarts with his presence after all. Harry studied him with mild interest. Malfoy, I presume. Draco, son of Lucius. The boy looked momentarily surprised at being recognized, then pleased. My reputation precedes me. Something like that. Harry gestured to the empty seats. Care to join us? Or did you just come to confirm the rumors? Malfoy hesitated, clearly not having expected an invitation. After a moment's consideration, he nodded to his companions. Wait outside. When the door closed behind the 2 larger boys, Malfoy took a seat opposite Harry, his posture deliberately casual yet clearly rehearsed. Father said you might be difficult, Malfoy began, watching Harry carefully. Given the unfortunate misunderstandings with the headmaster. Misunderstandings? Hermione repeated, her tone deceptively light. Is that what your father calls 50 years of magical theft? Malfoy's eyes narrowed as he turned to her. And you are? Hermione Granger. Granger, not a wizarding name. How observant, Hermione replied coolly. I'm Muggleborn. And magically bound by Dumbledore until 3 years ago, when Harry and his allies freed me. Malfoy's expression shifted from dismissive to genuinely curious. Bound? What do you mean? Harry leaned forward slightly. That's an interesting question, Draco. Has your father ever mentioned the concept of magical binding? Or perhaps you've noticed certain spells being strangely difficult despite your natural talent. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Malfoy's face. What are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm stating a fact. Albus Dumbledore has been systematically binding the magic of students from powerful bloodlines for decades. The Malfoy line included. That's absurd, Malfoy scoffed, but Harry noticed he didn't immediately leave. My father would never allow. Your father doesn't know, Hermione interrupted. The bindings are placed during the standard health screening for first years. They're disguised as protective enchantments. Malfoy stared at them, his practiced arrogance giving way to genuine concern. You're serious? Harry nodded. We can prove it, if you're willing to listen. For the next 20 minutes, Harry and Hermione explained the basics of Dumbledore's system, showing Malfoy the documented evidence they'd prepared specifically for this encounter. Lucius Malfoy's support of Dumbledore was a strategic liability they'd hoped to neutralize. So you're saying my magic, all of our magic, has been deliberately weakened? Malfoy finally asked, his voice tight with poorly concealed anger. Yes. And we plan to fix that today, Harry confirmed. When we reach Hogwarts, everything changes. Malfoy stood, his face pale but resolute. I need to send an owl to my father immediately. Be our guest, Harry gestured toward the door. But consider this, Draco, do you want to be on the wrong side of history? Because after today, there won't be any middle ground. Malfoy paused at the door. I'll reserve judgment until I see proof. But if what you're saying is true. He left the threat unfinished, exiting with a swirl of his robes. Well, that went better than expected, Hermione observed once he'd gone. It plants the seed of doubt, Harry agreed. And doubt is what we need right now, enough people questioning Dumbledore's methods to create space for the truth. The rest of the journey passed with a steady stream of curious visitors. Harry engaged with each of them deliberately, not as the boy who lived of legend but as a knowledgeable equal, casually dropping references to magical theory that most first-years shouldn't know. By the time the train approached Hogsmeade Station, rumors were flying through the carriages about Harry Potter's unexpected magical knowledge and his cryptic comments about Hogwarts as it was meant to be. As students disembarked into the gathering dusk, Hagrid's familiar call rang out, "Fur's years. Fur's years over here." Harry smiled at the sight of the half-giant. Hagrid was one of the few Hogwarts staff they believed to be completely innocent of Dumbledore's manipulations, a victim himself, in fact, with his magic restricted and his education truncated after his expulsion. "Hello, Hagrid," Harry greeted him, approaching with Hermione. Hagrid beamed down at him. "Harry. Look at ya. Last time I saw ya, were just a tiny baby. Ya look like your dad, but with my mother's eyes," Harry finished with a genuine smile. "So I've heard. It's good to see you, Hagrid." The gamekeeper looked momentarily confused. "Shouldn't have expected ye to remember me, course. Dumbledore said ye've been livin' with your muggle relatives all this time." "Did he?" Harry kept his tone casual. "Interesting. Well, we shouldn't hold up the other first years. We'll catch up properly soon." As Harry and Hermione walked past toward the carriages instead of the boats, Hagrid called after them, "Oi! First years take the boats across the lake." "Not us," Harry replied with a wave. "Special circumstances. Professor McGonagall knows." They left a bewildered Hagrid behind, meeting Neville and Susan at the carriages. The four climbed into an empty one, which began moving immediately toward the castle looming on the cliff above. "How was your journey?" Susan asked. "Productive," Hermione reported. "We spoke with multiple potential allies, including, surprisingly, Draco Malfoy." "Malfoy?" Neville looked skeptical. "His father's been Dumbledore's strongest defender in the Wizengamot." For now, Harry nodded toward the castle ahead. But self-interest is a powerful motivator. Once the Malfoys understand what's been done to their family magic, I expect their allegiance will shift rather dramatically. As their carriage rounded a bend in the road, Hogwarts came into full view, towers and turrets silhouetted against the darkening sky, windows glowing with warm light. Despite the circumstances, Harry felt a surge of emotion at his first sight of the legendary school. "She recognizes you," Morgana whispered in his mind. "Can you feel it?" And Harry could. Beneath the awe any wizard might feel at the magnificent castle, he sensed something else, a subtle resonance, as if the very stones were humming in recognition. "The castle knows," Luna had said. "The stones remember." Now he understood what she meant. "Harry?" Neville's voice brought him back to the present. "You okay? You went somewhere else for a minute." "Just communing with Hogwarts," Harry replied, earning curious looks from his friends. "She knows we're coming." The carriages delivered them to the castle's main entrance, where Professor McGonagall waited, her expression carefully neutral as students streamed past her into the Great Hall. "Mr. Potter, Miss Granger, Mr. Longbottom, Miss Bones," she greeted them with a slight nod. "If you'll follow me, please." She led them not to the antechamber where first years traditionally waited, but to a small room off the entrance hall. Once the door closed behind them, her formal demeanor softened slightly. "Everything is in place," she informed them quietly. "The headmaster knows you've arrived, of course. He's asked to speak with you privately before the feast, Mr. Potter." "I expected as much," Harry replied. "But I think we'll skip the private chat and proceed directly to the main event." McGonagall's lips thinned. "He won't like that." "That's rather the point, Professor." Harry checked his watch. "The first years should be crossing the lake now. We'll enter during the sorting, maximum audience for what comes next." "And the other arrangements?" Neville answered, "Our adult allies are in position, Sirius and Amelia at the main gates with Augusta and the others, ready to enter on signal. The international observers from France and Bulgaria are already seated at the far end of the Ravenclaw table, disguised as visiting scholars." McGonagall nodded, though Harry noticed her hands fidgeting with her emerald robes, a rare sign of nerves from the typically composed professor. "Very well. I should return to my duties with the first years. Good luck." She paused at the door. "And Mr. Potter, remember your promise regarding the students' safety." "It's still my priority, Professor," Harry assured her. "No matter what happens." After McGonagall left, the four friends used the time to make final preparations. From his expanded moleskin pouch, Harry withdrew several items from Morgana's repository, most importantly, a slender rod of blackthorn wood inlaid with silver runes. Not a wand in the conventional sense, but a focus specifically designed to channel the magic of Hogwarts itself. "Hold it against your heart before you enter the Great Hall," Morgana instructed. "It needs to attune to both your magic and the castle's." Harry did as she suggested, feeling an immediate warmth spread from the rod through his chest. The silver runes briefly glowed blue-violet, the signature color of his magic. "Ready?" he asked, looking at each of his friends in turn. They nodded, faces set with determination. They'd prepared for this moment for 3 years. There would be no turning back once they entered the Great Hall. Remember, Harry said as they approached the massive oak doors, "Whatever Dumbledore does, however he responds, we stay focused on the plan. This isn't about revenge, it's about liberation." The great hall buzzed with conversation as hundreds of students settled at their house tables. At the front of the hall, the sorting ceremony was underway, with McGonagall calling names from her scroll as nervous first-years approached the ancient hat one by one. "Patil, Padma." The hat considered briefly before shouting, "Ravenclaw." Harry nodded to his friends. It was time. The massive doors swung open, seemingly of their own accord, as Harry stepped forward. He didn't use magic to enhance his entrance, he didn't need to. The sheer unexpectedness of 4 students interrupting the sacred tradition of the sorting was enough to cause an immediate hush to fall over the great hall. All eyes turned to the newcomer striding confidently down the central aisle. Harry led the way, the blackthorn rod visible in his right hand, his face calm and focused. Whispers erupted as students recognized the famous lightning scar. At the staff table, Dumbledore rose to his feet, his habitual twinkle conspicuously absent from his blue eyes. Beside him, Severus Snape scowled darkly, while Filius Flitwick looked on with evident curiosity. "Mr. Potter," Dumbledore called out, his voice carrying easily through the hall. "While we're delighted you've chosen to join us at Hogwarts, I'm afraid you're interrupting our sorting ceremony. Perhaps you could wait with the other first years?" Harry continued forward until he stood at the center of the hall, directly before the staff table. "I'm not here to be sorted, Headmaster. I think you know that." More whispers erupted among the students. McGonagall remained by the sorting hat, her expression now openly concerned as she glanced between Harry and Dumbledore. "Then perhaps we should discuss your special circumstances in private," Dumbledore suggested, his tone grandfatherly but with an unmistakable edge. "No more private conversations. No more secrets." Harry turned to address the entire hall. "For too long, the truth has been hidden from the students of Hogwarts. That ends tonight." Dumbledore's smile became fixed. "Mr. Potter, you are clearly laboring under some misapprehensions. This is hardly the appropriate forum for—" "This is exactly the appropriate forum," Harry interrupted, raising his voice. "Because what I have to say concerns everyone here." He turned slowly, making eye contact with students at each house table. "How many of you have struggled with spells that should come easily? Found your magic inconsistent or restricted in certain areas? Been told it's normal, that you're just finding your strength or developing at your own pace?" Uncertain murmurs spread through the hall. Harry saw confusion on many faces, but also recognition on others, particularly among the older students. "Mr. Potter, that's quite enough," Dumbledore said sharply, all pretense of benevolence dropping from his voice. "Students, please remain calm. Mr. Potter has been subjected to unfortunate influences that have filled his head with fantasies and, not fantasies, Headmaster. Evidence." Harry nodded to Hermione, who withdrew a stack of parchments from her robes and began distributing copies to each house table with a flick of her wand. "These documents from Gringotts, verified by magical oath, prove what's been happening at Hogwarts for decades." Students grabbed the flying parchments, heads bending together as they read. Exclamations of shock and disbelief began to ripple through the hall. "For 50 years, Harry continued, his voice carrying clearly, Albus Dumbledore has been systematically binding the magical potential of students at this school, particularly those from powerful bloodlines. He's been siphoning magic for his own use while ensuring no one could grow powerful enough to challenge him." "Preposterous." Snape snarled from the staff table. "Potter, your arrogance exceeds even your father's." "Is it preposterous, Professor Snape?" Harry turned to face the potions master directly. "You were one of his victims too. Your exceptional talent for potion-making was allowed to flourish because it suited his purposes, but have you never wondered why your spellcasting doesn't match the brilliance of your magical theory?" Snape's sallow face drained of what little color it had. Before he could respond, another voice spoke up from the Slytherin table. "It's true." Draco Malfoy was on his feet, his face flushed with anger. I've just confirmed it with a family testing charm my father taught me. There are bindings on my magic, bindings that weren't placed by my parents. This declaration from the son of Dumbledore's most prominent Wizengamot supporter sent a shockwave through the hall. More students began casting detection charms, taught by older siblings or parents, and cries of alarm spread as they discovered their own bindings. Dumbledore raised his hands, projecting calm authority. "Students, please. These are serious mischaracterizations of standard protective enchantments. All magical schools employ such measures to prevent accidental magic from, binding core magic isn't protection," Hermione called out clearly. "It's restriction. And you've been doing it not just to prevent accidents, but to maintain control and siphon power." At the Hufflepuff table, Susan Bones stood. "My aunt, Amelia Bones, head of magical law enforcement, has been investigating these claims for 3 years. The evidence is irrefutable." From the Gryffindor table, Neville added his voice. "My grandmother, Augusta Longbottom, discovered bindings on my magic that were placed without family consent. When they were removed, my magical ability increased tenfold." The Great Hall was now in tumult, with students shouting questions, some in panic, others in anger. Prefects struggled to maintain order as several younger students began to cry. "Silence!" Dumbledore's magically amplified voice thundered through the hall, and a wave of pressure pushed everyone back into their seats, everyone except Harry, who stood unmoved at the center. In the sudden quiet, Dumbledore spoke with deadly calm. "Mr. Potter, you have disrupted an important school tradition, spread dangerous misinformation, and incited panic among the students. I must insist that you and your friends leave immediately. We will discuss appropriate consequences later." "No, Headmaster. We will resolve this now." Harry raised the blackthorn rod. "As heir of Godric Gryffindor through the Potter line, and magical heir of Morgana Le Fay who was blood-bound to all 4 founders, I invoke the Founders' Charter, Section 3, in times of corruption or malfeasance, a true heir may call upon the castle itself to judge the worthiness of those who claim authority within these walls." The ancient word seemed to reverberate through the hall, not from Harry's voice alone but from the very stones of the castle. A visible shudder ran through the enchanted ceiling, and the floating candles flickered momentarily. Dumbledore's face hardened. "You go too far, Harry. You have no idea what forces you're tampering with." "On the contrary," Harry replied steadily. "I understand exactly what I'm doing. Hogwarts." He called out, raising the blackthorn rod higher. "I call upon the ancient magic of your creation. Judge now between the heir who stands before you and the one who claims the headmaster's chair." For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like distant thunder, the castle responded. The floor beneath their feet trembled. The enchanted ceiling, which had shown a peaceful night sky with scattered stars, transformed into a swirling vortex of magical energy. From the walls, floor, and ceiling, threads of golden light emerged, converging on Harry and the blackthorn rod. "Now," Morgana's voice urged. "The castle recognizes you. Complete the invocation. I, Harry James Potter, heir by blood and magic to the founders of this school, call forth the true Hogwarts from beneath the layers of manipulation and constraint. Show yourself as you were meant to be." The golden threads connecting Harry to the castle pulsed, then flared blindingly bright. A wave of magic expanded outward from him, washing over every person in the hall. As it passed through each student, gasps and cries of surprise erupted, many feeling their bound magic suddenly loosened, if not completely freed. But the transformation of the castle itself was even more dramatic. The Great Hall seemed to expand, the ceiling soaring higher, the walls pushing outward. Colors deepened and enriched. The house banners along the walls changed subtly, the divisions remaining but now joined by additional symbols that had been absent for centuries, ancient runes representing magical disciplines that transcended house divisions. "Stop this immediately," Dumbledore commanded, raising his wand toward Harry. "You have no idea of the delicate balances you're disrupting." A bolt of red light, a stunner, shot from Dumbledore's wand, but before it could reach Harry, it dissipated against an invisible barrier. The castle protects its recognized heir, Morgana explained with satisfaction. He cannot attack you within these walls now that Hogwarts has acknowledged your claim. Harry turned to the stunned students. Feel the difference. This is Hogwarts as the founders intended, a place where all magic is honored, where artificial divisions don't limit your potential. The bindings Dumbledore placed on you are weakening already, just from this initial awakening of the castle's true nature. Throughout the hall, students were experiencing strange and wonderful sensations as their partially freed magic responded to the castle's transformation. Small objects levitated spontaneously. Sparks danced from fingertips. Several students found themselves performing wandless magic without even trying. This is dangerous recklessness. Dumbledore thundered, but Harry noticed something revealing. The headmaster looked physically diminished somehow, as if the castle's transformation was draining him. The restrictions were necessary for safety and proper development. That's a lie, Harry responded calmly. They were necessary for your control. For your ability to siphon magic from ancient bloodlines. For your reputation as the most powerful wizard of the age. At that moment, the great doors of the hall burst open once more. Sirius Black strode in, followed by Amelia Bones, Augusta Longbottom, and a contingent of witches and wizards Harry recognized as their core adult allies. Behind them came several official-looking wizards wearing the formal robes of the International Confederation of Wizards. Right on time, Harry murmured to Hermione. Albus Dumbledore, Amelia called out formally. As head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, I am here to witness these proceedings in an official capacity. And I, added a stern-looking wizard with a French accent, represent the International Confederation of Wizards, here to observe what appears to be a legitimate succession challenge under the ancient laws of magical institutions. Dumbledore's eyes darted around the hall, assessing his rapidly deteriorating position. Most of the staff appeared shocked and confused. Students were experiencing unpredictable magic as their bindings weakened, and now official witnesses had arrived to document everything. This is an internal Hogwarts matter, he attempted, though his voice had lost its authoritative resonance. No longer, Sirius countered, moving to stand beside his godson. Not when it involves 5 decades of magical theft from hundreds of children. Dumbledore's eyes narrowed as he studied Harry. You've prepared well, I'll grant you that. But you've overreached. Even with your unusual heritage, you're still a child with limited magical education. Do you truly believe you can control Hogwarts better than I have for the past 40 years? I don't intend to control Hogwarts, Harry replied. I intend to liberate it. The school doesn't need a manipulative overlord, it needs stewards who honor its original purpose. He turned to address the hall again. For centuries, you've been taught that magic is rigidly categorized, light versus dark, permitted versus forbidden. Those artificial divisions were created to control you, to limit your understanding. True magic, as the founders knew, exists on a spectrum. Intent and wisdom determine whether magic helps or harms, not arbitrary classifications. As Harry spoke, the blackthorn rod in his hand pulsed with increasing intensity, and the golden threads connecting him to the castle grew brighter. Dumbledore's voice turned dangerously soft. And what of Voldemort, Harry? What of the dark wizards who would use unrestricted magic to dominate and destroy? My methods may seem harsh to you now, but they have maintained peace and safety for generations. At what cost? Harry challenged. A wizarding world that grows magically weaker with each generation. Knowledge lost because it doesn't fit your narrative. And let's be honest about Voldemort, your restrictions didn't stop him. If anything, your system of magical suppression created the perfect environment for his rise. When magic is arbitrarily restricted, those who break those restrictions gain disproportionate power. Murmurs of consideration spread through the hall. Even some staff members were nodding thoughtfully. Dumbledore's facade of calm control finally cracked. Enough. You speak of matters beyond your comprehension. He raised his wand again, but this time not toward Harry. If the castle responds to its heir, then perhaps it's time the heir faced a more direct challenge. With a complex series of wandless gestures, even now, demonstrating magical prowess few could match, Dumbledore activated some hidden mechanism. The stone floor beneath Harry suddenly illuminated with ancient runes that hadn't been visible moments before. A Founder's Trap. Morgana's voice rang with alarm in Harry's mind. He's triggering a security measure designed to test those claiming heirship. The illuminated runes began to spin around Harry's feet, forming a complex mandala of magical energy. From each cardinal direction, a beam of colored light shot toward him, red from the direction of the Gryffindor table, blue from Ravenclaw, yellow from Hufflepuff, and green from Slytherin. "Let's see if you're truly the heir you claim to be," Dumbledore called, a note of triumph in his voice. "This challenge requires the blood and magic of Founder's heirs, all 4 Founders. Without them, the consequences are severe." Harry felt the trap's magic constricting around him like a tightening noose. The 4 colored beams had nearly reached him, and he could sense their testing, probing quality, searching for Founder's blood that he only partially possessed. "I have a connection to all 4 through our magical bond," Morgana reminded him urgently. "But you must channel it properly or the trap will see only your Gryffindor blood." Around the hall, students watched in horrified fascination. Some staff members moved as if to intervene, but McGonagall held them back. "This is between them now," she said grimly. "Magical succession challenges follow ancient rules we cannot interrupt." The 4 beams were inches from Harry now. In seconds, they would touch him and deliver their judgment. "The Blackthorn Rod," Morgana instructed. "Plant it in the center of the rune circle and channel my connection through your blood." Without hesitation, Harry thrust the rod into the stone floor. It sank in as if the solid stone were soft clay. The moment it was anchored, Harry gripped it with both hands, a drop of his blood from a small cut on his palm sliding down the wood. "Blood of Gryffindor, magic of Morgana, friend to all Founders," he declared. "I claim my rightful place not as ruler but as steward." The 4 colored beams struck him simultaneously, but instead of harming him, they melded with his magic, creating a swirling aurora of color that expanded outward through the entire hall. Where Dumbledore's test had sought to challenge his claim, Harry's freely given blood and honest intent transformed it into a demonstration of legitimacy. The magical display was spectacular. Students gasped as the aurora touched them, many feeling the last of their bindings dissolve completely. The castle itself seemed to sing, a harmonic resonance that vibrated through every stone, every beam, every enchanted object. Dumbledore staggered back, his face a mask of disbelief. "Impossible. The trap should have what, Headmaster?" Harry asked, still standing calmly at the center of the fading aurora. "Injured me? Expelled me from the castle?" The Founders built their safeguards with wisdom, not malice. They designed them to test intent as much as bloodline. For the first time, real fear showed in Dumbledore's eyes. "You don't understand what you've done. The protections I've maintained, the balances I've preserved, were never yours to control," Harry finished for him. "The true protections of Hogwarts have always been in the castle itself, in the combined wisdom of the Founders. You substituted your judgment for theirs, your restrictions for their vision." Harry turned to face the students again. "Feel your magic now, truly yours for perhaps the first time. This is your birthright, not a privilege to be doled out by self-appointed arbiters." Throughout the hall, students were experimenting with their newly liberated magic, many with expressions of wonder. Spells that had been difficult before now came easily. Some discovered talents that had been completely suppressed, metamorph magic, natural legilimency, elemental affinities that had been dismissed as myths. Dumbledore made one last attempt. Drawing himself up, he addressed the staff table. "Faculty of Hogwarts, I call upon you to restore order. Mr. Potter, however well-intentioned, has disrupted magical safeguards essential to this institution's function." But to his evident shock, few responded to his call. Most sat in stunned silence, processing the revelations and the tangible evidence of the students' enhanced abilities. A few, including Flitwick and Sprout, were actually helping nearby students adjust to their newly accessible magic. "I think, Albus," McGonagall said quietly but clearly, "that the evidence speaks for itself." Dumbledore's shoulders sagged minutely, the first true sign of defeat. But Harry remained wary. A wizard of Dumbledore's experience and power always had contingencies. "He will make one final attempt," Morgana warned. "Be ready." Sure enough, Dumbledore straightened, his blue eyes hardening with resolve. "Very well. If Hogwarts has truly chosen a new steward, then I shall respect that choice." The concession came too easily. Harry tensed, watching Dumbledore's hands carefully. However, the old wizard continued, "There remains the matter of transition. As the outgoing headmaster, it is my duty to formally transfer certain responsibilities and protections to my successor." With a movement too quick to follow, Dumbledore pulled something from his robes, not his wand, but a small silver device that gleamed in the candlelight. "Harry, catch." He tossed the object directly at Harry before anyone could react. "Don't touch it." Morgana's warning came simultaneously with Sirius's shout of alarm. Harry instinctively raised the blackthorn rod, intercepting the silver object before it could reach him. The moment the two items made contact, a blinding flash erupted, and a concussive wave of magic knocked everyone in the vicinity backward. When the light faded, the silver device lay in pieces on the floor, harmlessly neutralized by the blackthorn rod, which now glowed with a fierce internal light. A portkey linked to a magical draining circle, Sirius spat, regaining his feet. "You were going to transport Harry to a prepared location and drain his magic completely." Gasps of horror echoed through the hall. Even Dumbledore's most loyal supporters looked shocked at this blatant attempt to harm a student, the boy who lived, no less. Dumbledore's mask of benevolence had completely crumbled. In its place was a cold calculation that few had ever seen on the famous wizard's face. "You understand nothing," he hissed. "The power you're unleashing, the ancient magics you're tampering with, they require control, structure. Without the systems I've built, chaos will follow. Dark wizards will rise. The statute of secrecy will fall. The Muggles will turn on us as they always have." "Fear," Harry said sadly. "That's what it always comes down to with you. Fear disguised as wisdom. Control disguised as protection." He turned to Amelia Bones. "Madam Bones, I believe you have the authority to take the former headmaster into custody pending investigation." Amelia stepped forward, two Aurors flanking her. "Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore, you are hereby detained for questioning regarding allegations of magical theft, unauthorized binding of minors, attempted assault, and abuse of authority." Dumbledore surveyed the hall one last time, noting the faces that had turned from reverence to suspicion or outright hostility. For a brief moment, Harry thought he might resist arrest, and given his still considerable power, that would be disastrous. But some calculation seemed to shift behind those blue eyes. "Very well," Dumbledore said with surprising dignity. "I will cooperate with the investigation, confident that my actions, when properly understood, will be vindicated." He handed his wand to Amelia. "History will be the true judge of who acted for the greater good." As the Aurors escorted Dumbledore from the Great Hall, the remaining tension seemed to deflate. Students began talking excitedly among themselves, comparing magical experiences and testing newly discovered abilities. Staff members moved through the tables, helping to maintain some semblance of order while clearly processing their own revelations. Harry felt a momentary lightheadedness as the adrenaline of confrontation ebbed. Sirius steadied him with a hand on his shoulder. "You did it," his godfather said quietly. "I still can't quite believe it, but you did it." "We did it," Harry corrected, looking to where Hermione, Neville, and Susan were already organizing older students to help the younger ones. "And we're just getting started." McGonagall approached, her normally severe expression softened with something like wonder. "Mr. Potter, Harry, what happens now?" Hogwarts has never been without a headmaster, and despite your heritage, you are still 11 years old. I have no intention of becoming headmaster, Professor, Harry assured her. As I said, Hogwarts doesn't need a single ruler but proper stewards. He gestured to the staff table. The faculty will continue to run day-to-day operations, but with a new governing structure, a council representing all 4 houses, plus representatives from student, parent, and alumni groups. McGonagall looked skeptical. That's a significant change to a 1,000-year tradition. Not as significant as you might think, Harry countered. The founders originally governed Hogwarts collectively, not through a single headmaster. The current structure only emerged centuries later. And where did you learn that particular historical detail? She asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Harry smiled slightly. From someone who was there. Before McGonagall could respond, Phileas Flitwick joined them, practically bouncing with excitement. Mr. Potter. The magical theories you've introduced, they align perfectly with research I've been conducting for decades but could never fully implement under the previous restrictions. The tiny professor could barely contain himself. The educational possibilities are extraordinary. That's the idea, Professor, Harry agreed. Hogwarts should be a place where magical knowledge is explored, not constrained. Where tradition is honored but not at the expense of growth and discovery. Over the next hour, a new order began to take shape. The sorting of remaining first years resumed, though with McGonagall explaining that house placement was now considered a community affiliation rather than a rigid identity. Classes would be temporarily suspended for 3 days while faculty adjusted curricula to accommodate students' expanded magical capabilities. Throughout it all, Harry moved through the hall, speaking with students and staff, answering questions, and providing reassurances. He took special care with the younger students, many of whom were overwhelmed by the night's events and the sudden increase in their magical sensitivity. It's okay to feel a bit dizzy or overwhelmed, he explained to a group of wide-eyed first years. Your magic has been partially bound since you arrived, and now it's free. Think of it like legs that fell asleep, there's a tingling period before everything works properly again. By the time the impromptu feast finally concluded, a tentative excitement had replaced the initial shock and confusion. Students departed for their dormitories with heads full of questions but also a palpable sense of possibility. What about you, Harry? Hermione asked as the hall began to empty. Where will you stay? You're not officially sorted into a house. The castle has provided for that, Harry replied, gesturing toward a previously unnoticed door that had appeared near the staff table. Founders' quarters. They've been sealed for centuries, but the castle reopened them when it recognized my claim. Wicked, Neville breathed. Can we see? Of course. You're all welcome. The founders' quarters proved to be a comfortable suite of rooms located in a tower that somehow connected to all 4 house areas, allowing Harry to access any part of the castle with equal ease. The main chamber featured a round table reminiscent of Arthurian legend, symbolizing the equality of the founders' vision. As his friends explored the quarters with exclamations of delight, Harry stepped out onto a balcony that offered a panoramic view of the Hogwarts grounds. The night was clear, stars gleaming above the dark outline of the Forbidden Forest. On the horizon, lights twinkled in Hogsmeade Village. You've done well, young heir, Morgana's voice came gently to his mind. The path of restoration has begun. But it's just the beginning, isn't it? Harry murmured. Dumbledore's influence extends far beyond Hogwarts. And there will be resistance to these changes. Always. Change is never embraced universally, especially by those who benefited from the old order. But you have something Dumbledore never truly had, despite his power and position. What's that? The truth. Not your interpretation of it, not a convenient version that serves your purposes, but the demonstrable reality that magic flourishes when artificial constraints are removed. Every student in that hall tonight experienced that truth firsthand. Such evidence is difficult to argue against. Harry considered this as he gazed out over the grounds. What happens to Dumbledore now? That depends on many factors beyond your control. The political landscape, the willingness of those he's harmed to speak out, the courage of the Wisengamot to hold one of their own accountable. But his power is broken, not just his position, but the source of his extraordinary magical strength. The siphoned magic, Harry realized. When we freed the students and awoke the castle's true nature, we severed his connection to all that stolen power. Precisely. He is now merely an elderly wizard of above-average natural talent, formidable still, but no longer the magical titan who could duel Voldemort to a standstill. The door to the balcony opened, and Sirius joined him. "Quite a view," his godfather commented, leaning against the stone balustrade. "Quite a night," Harry replied. Sirius chuckled. "That's putting it mildly. You've just rewritten magical education in Britain in a single evening. Not bad for an 11-year-old. I had help," Harry smiled, thinking of all the preparation, all the allies who had made this moment possible. "What's next on the agenda? Ministry reform? International magical cooperation? Universal house elf rights? Hermione's already making lists, by the way." Harry laughed. "One revolution at a time, I think. Hogwarts needs to stabilize before we tackle the wider wizarding world. But yes, eventually, all of those things. The patterns Dumbledore established here are reflected throughout magical society. Breaking them at their source is just the first step." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as the moon rose over the lake. "Your parents would be so proud of you," Sirius said quietly. "Not just for standing up to Dumbledore, but for how you did it, focused on helping others, not on revenge." "I thought about revenge," Harry admitted. "Especially when I first learned what he'd done to my family, to all of us. But Morgana showed me that would just continue the cycle. Breaking free means creating something better, not just tearing down what exists." Sirius nodded thoughtfully. "Wise words from your ancient advisor. Speaking of whom, will she remain with you now that her magic has been liberated?" "I will always be a part of you, young heir," Morgana answered before Harry could wonder. "But my presence will fade as you grow into your own power and wisdom. You have your own path to forge now." Harry relayed this to Sirius, who nodded again. "Makes sense. Magical echoes typically diminish once they've fulfilled their primary purpose. But I'd say having the wisdom of Morgana Le Fay as an occasional consultant isn't a bad arrangement." "No," Harry agreed. "Not bad at all." Their conversation was interrupted by excited calls from inside the suite. They returned to find their friends gathered around an ancient stone basin that had apparently emerged from a previously solid wall. "It's a pensieve," Hermione explained breathlessly. "But not like any I've read about. The runes around the edge suggest it can project memories from multiple viewers without them having to enter the memory physically. The heart of memory," Harry recognized. "Or at least, a version of it. The main repository must be connected to this one." "Think of what we could teach with this," Neville said excitedly. "Not just telling students about historical events or magical theory, but showing them." As his friends discussed the educational possibilities, Harry felt a profound sense of rightness. This was what Hogwarts was meant to be, a place of discovery and exchange, where knowledge flowed freely and magic was honored in all its forms. The next morning, owls streamed into the great hall in unprecedented numbers, bearing letters, howlers, and newspapers. The Daily Prophet's headline screamed, "Revolution at Hogwarts, Dumbledore detained, Potter claims founders right." The article was surprisingly balanced, detailing the events of the previous night with minimal editorial commentary, though Harry suspected Amelia Bones' influence had something to do with that restraint. More telling were the dozens of inset quotes from students who had experienced the liberation of their magic firsthand. It was like seeing in color after a lifetime of black and white. One seventh-year Ravenclaw was quoted. "Spells I've struggled with for years suddenly make perfect sense. My family always said I had a metamorphmagus gift like my mother," a Hufflepuff third-year reported. "But it never manifested until last night when whatever was blocking it disappeared. Such testimonials were difficult to dismiss as delusion or manipulation. The evidence was too widespread, too consistent, too personally experienced by hundreds of students from all houses and backgrounds. Not all reactions were positive, of course. Several howlers exploded at the staff table, mostly directed at McGonagall as the senior professor, demanding explanations and expressing outrage at the disruption of tradition. A smaller but vocal contingent of students, primarily from wealthy pure-blood families with ties to the ministry, remained skeptical or openly hostile to the changes. "This doesn't end here," Draco Malfoy commented as he passed Harry in the entrance hall later that morning. "My father says the Wizengamot is in complete chaos. Half want Dumbledore's head, half think you're a dangerous radical who should be contained." "And what do you think, Draco?" Harry asked. The blonde boy considered for a moment. "I think my magic feels stronger than it ever has. And I think whoever tried to limit that deserves whatever they get." A hint of the old Malfoy arrogance returned. "Just don't expect me to join your little Reformation club. Some traditions are worth keeping." Harry smiled slightly. "Fair enough. Hogwarts should have room for many perspectives, as long as no one's magic or potential is suppressed in the process." Over the following days, the initial turmoil began to settle into a new rhythm. Classes resumed with revised curricula that acknowledged students' expanded capabilities. The faculty, after their own period of adjustment and in some cases, reconciliation with their complicity in Dumbledore's system, embraced the opportunity to teach more comprehensive and advanced material. A week after the confrontation in the Great Hall, Harry received a message requesting his presence in what had been Dumbledore's office. He found McGonagall there, along with representatives from the Board of Governors and the Ministry of Education. "Mr. Potter," McGonagall greeted him. "These gentlemen have some questions about the new educational approach you've instituted." For the next 2 hours, Harry explained and defended the changes, drawing on both Morgana's ancient wisdom and the practical results already evident throughout the school. He outlined a vision of magical education that honored tradition while embracing innovation, that respected house identity while encouraging cross-house collaboration. "The founders never intended houses to be rivalries that divide us," he explained. "They were meant to be communities that celebrate different strengths and perspectives, all contributing to a greater whole." By the end of the meeting, even the most skeptical officials had to acknowledge the positive results they'd observed during their tour of the school. Students were more engaged, magic was more vibrant, and there was a palpable sense of purpose and possibility throughout the castle. "We'll be watching closely, of course," the ministry representative said as they prepared to leave. "Such dramatic changes require careful monitoring." "Of course," Harry agreed. "Transparency and accountability should be central to Hogwarts governance going forward. The days of a single authority making unilateral decisions behind closed doors are over." After they departed, McGonagall gave Harry a rare smile. "Well handled, Mr. Potter. Though I suspect this is just the first of many such encounters you'll face." "Undoubtedly," Harry acknowledged. "Change never comes without resistance, especially when it disrupts long-established power structures." McGonagall studied him thoughtfully. "You speak with remarkable maturity for your age." Harry smiled. "I've had good teachers." As the term progressed, news from beyond Hogwarts indicated the wider impacts of their revolution. Dumbledore remained in ministry custody, though his trial had been delayed multiple times as the scope of the investigation expanded. More families were coming forward with evidence of magical binding, not just at Hogwarts but throughout British magical society. International magical communities were sending observers to study the Hogwarts transformation, as it was being called. Some countries were already implementing testing programs to identify and remove similar bindings in their own educational systems. Most significantly, magical research was flourishing as previously suppressed knowledge re-entered circulation. Discoveries and innovations that had been stalled for decades suddenly leaped forward as wizards and witches accessed their full potential. On a crisp October evening, Harry stood on his balcony again, watching students practicing magic on the grounds below. Where once they would have been limited to strictly regulated spells appropriate to their year, now they explored a broader range of magic under the guidance of teachers and older students who emphasized responsibility and control alongside power and creativity. "This is how it should have been all along," Morgana observed, her presence a gentle whisper at the edge of his consciousness. "Magic honored in all its forms, flowing freely between generations." "We still have so much to do," Harry said, thinking of the wider wizarding world beyond Hogwarts walls. The Ministry, International Relations, the Statute of Secrecy, integration with Muggle society. One step at a time, young heir. The foundation is laid. The rest will follow in its season. Harry nodded, understanding the wisdom in that approach. Sustainable change couldn't be forced or rushed. They had broken Dumbledore's hold on magical education and begun the process of recovery. The ripple effects would continue to spread, challenging assumptions and transforming institutions far beyond Hogwarts. Below, a group of first-years successfully performed a charm that would have been considered fourth-year level under the old system. Their laughter floated up to him on the evening breeze, the sound of potential unleashed, of futures reclaimed. That night, as Harry sat with his friends around the round table in the Founders' Quarters, planning their next steps and sharing their experiences, he felt a profound sense of purpose. The path ahead would not be easy. There would be resistance, setbacks, and new challenges they couldn't yet imagine. But they had done what many thought impossible. They had confronted one of the most powerful and respected wizards in the world and revealed the truth behind his carefully constructed facade. They had freed hundreds of young witches and wizards from magical bindings that had limited their potential for generations. Most importantly, they had begun to restore a vision of magic that transcended artificial boundaries, magic as it was meant to be, wild and ordered, powerful and subtle, light and dark and all the infinite shades between. "To the future," Sirius proposed, raising his glass in a toast. "To the future," they echoed. And in that moment, Harry knew with absolute certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, that future would be brighter, freer, and more magical than anything Albus Dumbledore had ever allowed them to imagine. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.